Hello and welcome to this emergency podcast here on the Barroom Network. John Buffone here, and you all know why we're going live right now. The newest addition to the Chicago Bears, quarterback Andy Dalton, former Bengal, former Cowboy, inks a one-year deal for $10 million, possible $13 million with incentives. And right now, the flames that are coming off of Twitter are redder than Dalton's hair. Bears fans are not happy. And before I kick it over to the rest of the guys at the Barroom, I want to give you my thoughts on this because, quite frankly, my initial reaction was, I'm done. I'm tired of just waiting for this all to work out. I am tired of trying to figure this franchise out. I'm tired of believing that there's some other kind of goal or there's some ploy or they're going to outsmart somebody. I'm tired of it because I don't understand what this does. I don't understand what the theory is behind this. If you like Dalton so much, why didn't you sign him last year when he signed a $3 million contract with the Dallas Cowboys? You liked Nick Foles so much more than Andy Dalton that you traded a fourth-round pick and for his stupid contract. You liked Nick Foles so much more than Andy Dalton that you traded for him. And now, what's the plan this year? Go out and get Andy Dalton. And I don't want to hear that this is some ploy and this is a Ryan Pace is playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. Ryan Pace isn't playing anything. He's not even playing the part of a GM right now. Because what did we hear at the end of the year press conference? We got to get better at the quarterback position. The entire offseason is going to be about fixing the quarterback position. And what do we got? We got two bridge quarterbacks in Nick Foles and Andy Dalton. So I'm tired of believing that there's hope here. I'm tired of thinking that someday the Bears aren't going to be run like a family diner. And it's one bad mistake after another. I don't understand why they continuously strike out on this. And it starts at the top. George McCaskey, you wanted to do all this collaboration. Ryan Pace, you want to do all this collaboration. Everything's on the table. We go from maybe having Russell Wilson to Andy Dalton is going to be the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears in 2021. That's what all that collaboration did. That's what all that planning and talking and, the leadership, that's what the culture did. The culture brought you Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback in 2021. How do you feel about that, Bears fans? Best culture in the NFL. That's what your quarterback situation looks like right now. I'm sure there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, so I'm going to bring Aldo Gandia on to the pod right now. Aldo, what are some of the comments in the chat room?
Well, we've got plenty of people who are about as red hot as you, but I'm not sure I can post some of these comments. So Caesar saying Dalton is trade bait to the Hawks. And you know what? That might be true. If the Seattle Seahawks are interested in trading Russell Wilson, then perhaps they need a quarterback to come back, and perhaps they weren't happy about Nick Foles, and perhaps they told the Chicago Bears, work out a deal for Andy Dalton, and then you can include him in the package. But as Gasman Mike says, that's probably a big joke. King Pookie Nation Alvarez says, this is the worst day in Bears history. PZ says, this has to be a part of something else. Nobody is this effing stupid. Tony Salamanti, he's got more F words for us. And on it goes. I mean, I can, here's another one. JMNA 9357 says, Pace is done. The Factor One says, John Buffone and Tyler Ellis are one of the most passionate Bears fans I've ever seen. LOL. Your passion is your passion is still here, but any optimism that you ever had about the Chicago Bears is totally out the window, right?
I'm pissed off, Aldo, because what's the plan here? Is everyone's saying, well, this proves that they're going to trade up in the draft and get a young quarterback. Okay, that's all well and good. If that was your plan, then that was your plan. But what purpose does Dalton serve at this point then? If you sign him to a one-year deal, let's say he plays pretty well, but then you draft a guy, I assume you want that guy to play at some point. So you already had your bridge guy in Nick Foles. And look at some of the numbers in Dalton's career. We probably could have got that production out of Nick Foles. So I still don't know what is Andy Dalton supposed to do in 2021. If he plays well enough and the Bears draft someone, they probably want that young quarterback to play, and then Andy Dalton will go get a contract somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand all this. And once again, if you think that they're going to this, although I'd love to think that this is some, magical ploy where they're going to use all these guys for trade bait, and then that's what's going to happen. I don't believe that. What evidence do we have that this front office is smarter than anyone? This is not. I don't understand how this could possibly work out the way that they want it to work out. So I just think it's just an. Everything that they tried to do fell through. You're not going to get Deshaun Watson. You're not going to get Russell Wilson. Whatever plans that you tried to do as far as maybe Derek Carr or Mariota, or hell, they didn't even get Jameis Winston. They didn't go get anyone else. So this is the upgrade. This is the upgrade that they wanted at quarterback. The upgrade they've been talking about since the season ended. This is the upgrade. Andy Dalton.
But it is possible that they're not done, that there could still be a quarterback drafted. There could be still a trade. Perhaps, like I said earlier, the acquisition of Dalton is part of a bigger plan. And, at the top of the hour, we'll have Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski, the co-hosts of Draft on Tap, and they've been pounding the table for one of these 5 quarterbacks that are available in the first round. So perhaps Dalton is going to be a part of that trade, or Foles will be a part of that trade. So this may not necessarily be done. I'm going to hold out hope that, and I don't have confidence, but I'm going to hold out a smidgen of hope that Ryan Pace still has some kind of a plan that's going to help better this move so that it's not as dirty tasting as it is right now.
Well, honestly, it sounds like every time that it's like, well, they could be packaged for this, or this is all part of the grand scheme. I mean, we're going to start denying the moon landing here too, and we're going to start talking about the grassy knoll. We have to stop thinking that this is all part of some big excellent conspiracy, because we've seen the history with this franchise. We've seen what Ryan Pace has done. We saw him go out and get Mike Glennon. We saw them draft Trubisky. We saw them go out and get and trade for Nick Foles. Why all of a sudden is this going to be, Andy Dalton? I bet they have something up their sleeve. They got nothing. Mm-hmm. I have no reason. If it happens, great. But I have no faith that it can happen, because why should I? Why should I have any faith that this is part of some grand plan? So signing Dalton and then what? Trading up in the draft and going out and getting one of these big quarterbacks? Great. That seems to be your best option right now. I don't understand going out and getting Dalton, though. I don't understand the move. And if they don't go up and get a quarterback in the draft, then what? Then what, Aldo? If they can't trade up, or those 5 quarterbacks are taken, what happens then? Then you go into the year with Nick Foles and Andy Dalton?
Yeah. Well, but that's the challenge that Matt Nagy got himself into, is that you just can't say, I'm going to get Russell Wilson, or I'm going to get Deshaun Watson, or I'm going to get one of the top 5 quarterbacks. You just can't say that, because you don't have the assets to do that. And so you've got to come up with creative ways of getting the best solution possible. And this might be the best solution. As badly as we want something better, it is quite possible that Ryan Pace did everything in his power to do something that would have helped this Bears better than Andy Dalton. Let's take a look at what some of the other people on Twitter have been saying. Adrian Amos.
That's a former Bear. That's a former Bear laughing his ass off at the Bears organization.
And Lance Briggs with the face palm. This is Adam Schefter, his first tweet, of course, on the bottom there, former Cowboys quarterback Andy Dalton signing a 1-year, $10 million deal with the chance to earn another $3 million in incentives. And so somebody asked, well, why make a trade for Andy Dalton when you could have acquired him as a free agent? Well, because the way the contract is designed could be that the Bears would eat these incentives if they're met with another team or any bonus dollars and so forth. And then he goes on to say, Adam Schefter, that is, says Chicago made a very aggressive pursuit of Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson per sources, and the Bears were told that Seattle is not trading him at this time. The Bears were one of the 4 teams Wilson's agent named as a place of interest. Now Chicago has an agreement with Dalton. Notice the verbiage there, at this time. So it could be that it's going to be later in the season. It could be a June 1st trade, because trading the Seahawks trading Russell Wilson post June 1st would be a less hit on their cap. So that's a possibility. So I'm just trying to present everything that's potentially possible here to try to find a silver lining. I'm sorry, John.
No. I appreciate you being the yin to my yang here, but it's just like I honestly cannot think of the positive outcomes. And you Aldo, you talked about, it's easy to say go get Watson, it's easy to say go get Wilson, but you have to trade with it. Why is everyone assuming it's so easy to trade up to number 5 or number 6 in the draft from 20? Why does everyone assume, as if there aren't going to be other teams that are also vying for those quarterbacks, as if there's not going to be competition to put a better package to move up there? Why are we just assuming that all of a sudden, oh, well, if we can't get Wilson or Watson, then we're going to trade up into the top 10 and we're going to get a quarterback? Why? Why do you just assume that? They're going to, and it's very possible that they're going to have to give up a pretty big package to go up and move into the top 10 if that's where they need to go. So everyone that's saying that they were going to give up too much for Wilson and we can't give up 3 first-round picks and we can't give up a player, I mean, it's probably not going to be that bad, but it's still going to be a pretty substantial haul to move up into the top 10 from number 20 this year if they want to go and get one of these young quarterbacks. And then you still got Andy Dalton there. You still got him as your starter. So I want to know what the theory is, and I don't know if there's ever going to be a press conference about this, but I want to know, you're in a win now mode, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you want we heard it from McCaskey himself. They got to show progress. Now, I know progress is a very relative term, and in Chicago, progress who knows what that means. So, but in a year where it's you got to go up and you got to show that you're a winner, you got to show that you're turning the corner. I don't see how this does it. I don't see how this does that. Do you see how this is the game changer they need on offense?
No, not at all. I do think, and we'll get into more of the X's and O's and play execution, and we'll take a look at some Dalton highlights. I do think, I mean, the guy has had some success in this league, and a year or two ago, I wouldn't have minded Andy Dalton as a bridge quarterback. Now it just feels like Mike Glennon all over because of the situation that the Bears are facing. But let's bring in Ryan Badgley of the Barfly Tailgate Show. Maybe he has a more optimistic view of this than you do. I doubt it.
No, I am not. I mean, I've been talking 4-12 for 2 months. Oh, I'm switching it to 3-13. I just the only thing this did for me is solidify the fact that Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy will finally be gone from the Chicago Bears organization next year. They have nothing, and that's basically what the Seattle Seahawks told them was, you could give us the 10 top players on your roster, and it isn't enough for Russell Wilson. And the same could be said by the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson. Nobody wants to go and deal with the shit show that is the Chicago Bears organization. You look at Allen Robinson. They haven't spoken to him since September to negotiate a new contract. Well, now you come to this point in the offseason, and
I don't know when I went.
Now you've got your number one receiver who's disgruntled and will not play. If he plays here this season, I will be shocked. If I'm Allen Robinson right now, I'm saying, I don't care where you ship me off to. I will not play for you. This is not going to work for me. I don't care if you're able to go up and trade for Trevor Lawrence. What you've done and shown to try to turn this franchise around, you don't have the pieces. Aldo, you just said it. The pieces aren't there for this organization to do anything at all. Now, you've seen the Chiefs move up to get Mahomes. They had to give up a first rounder. I said it on Facebook earlier tonight. I think if the Bears want to move up from 20 and get one of these top 5 quarterbacks, guys, they're going to have to give up, I think, a first rounder this year at number 20, a first rounder next year, and another pick, whether it's this year or next year, in order to be able to do that. And I just, look at the risk you took with Mitchell Trubisky. The fact that George McCaskey and Ted Phillips felt that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace were the right guys to make this decision again, that just shows you just how much they just don't collaborate. They talk all about collaboration. That's all we've heard all offseason. Well, your collaboration was Andy Dalton? I mean, John, you're in good enough shape. You should just take a chance and suit up and throw the football for these guys.
Well, I appreciate your confidence badge. But when you look at this statistically, if they're saying we're going to move up in the draft and we're going to grab one of these 5 quarterbacks, statistically and historically speaking, at least half of those guys are probably not going to work out. You're just not going to assume that all 5 guys are going to be, branded superstars from here on out. So that being the case, you're going to trust Ryan Pace, who has and Matt Nagy, who has brought in the likes of Mike Glennon, Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, and now Andy Dalton. You're going to trust those guys to pick one of those top quarterbacks. And so, excuse me if I'm not just eviscerating confidence right now that these guys could not just trade up into the top 10, but pick the right guy. I don't have much confidence at all. And like you said, Badge, you're going to have to put together a pretty convincing package. And if I'm Allen Robinson, I'm looking at all this going on, say, either trade me or I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. Because I thought that this was going to be, they were going to wait until July, or they're going to wait until the quarterback position kind of sorted itself out. If they were able to take that big swing at Russell Wilson, then they were going to have to adjust how they handle Allen Robinson. And so, or if they decide they were just going to go up and draft a guy, then they can extend Allen Robinson before I believe it's the middle of July. They can get a long-term deal done with him. If they go out and they get a guy on a rookie contract, then they can extend Allen Robinson because they'll have the cap space. I thought this was all going to be a big wait and see. I'm not sure. I'm not sure now because now you just allocate another $10 million to Andy Dalton, and you're not sure exactly what they're going to do in the draft. And if I'm Allen Robinson, I'm thinking, I'm just watching everything fall apart around me. And why would I want to be a part of this? We said this back in the middle of the season. Why? I mean, this is another one of those guys where we want to talk about culture and how the Bears have the best culture in the NFL. We talked about this last week with Kyle Long, how Bears fans love Kyle Long. Kyle Long loves Bears fans. I think he hates Matt Nagy. How many fan bases do you know when a guy says he's coming out of retirement and he's going to a different team, the fan base is like, yeah, Kyle, I hope you come back and throw it in our faces. I hope you make us look like asses. That's basically what they were saying. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the kind of support that Bears fans had. Like, yeah, we are idiots. I hope you kill us. Same with Allen Robinson. They're like, hey, please go out and go get your money and go play for another team and throw it in our faces. So I want to say that there's so much distrust for this, not just front office, but ownership and franchise. I don't want to hear anything more about the culture. I don't want to hear anything more about how it's a great place to work. I don't buy that crap because I think a good culture is a winning culture. And they don't have that. They haven't had that since 35 years. Yep. And so I'm tired of hearing about that. And I just don't trust these guys as far as I can throw. Well, I shouldn't say that because they're kind of skinny. So but I will say that I just don't trust them.
Yeah. I got to ask you guys.
Go ahead.
Too. D'Angelo Hall, I just caught him on NFL Network as they were starting their free agency frenzy show. first thing they talk about is Andy Dalton and the Chicago Bears. So you had Brian Billick come on and say, well, the question was asked, is Andy Dalton an upgrade? Brian Billick says, well, not an upgrade, but not a downgrade, da-da-da-da. So then they go to Derek Carr or David Carr, whatever the hell Carr, whatever one of them is, right? And he says, well, if you were looking to upgrade the quarterback position, this probably wasn't the way, but this is a safe signing, so on and so forth. Well,
very political.
Before this show came on the air, you had Michael Irvin and Steve Smith on the show before it, laughing at the Chicago Bears organization and their fan base because we're all losing it on Twitter. And D'Angelo Hall made this statement. The only thing this has done, and this, I know I just made it when I first came on, is solidified that the Chicago Bears will have a new GM and head coach next season. Now, my question to you guys is, do you see, I don't watch a ton of Andy Dalton, obviously, but I did get to see him a little bit last year. He's not awful, but at the same time, he's not the guy that's going to take you to the next level. I've heard we're in talks with Trent Williams. Well, I'm sorry. You're not going to spend that kind of money for Trent Williams to protect Andy Dalton. And if you are, then we're all blind to what Andy Dalton is, and he's shown the Bears something that we haven't seen in all these years. What do you guys really think of his play? And is it going to – is he a better fit to this offense? I don't think so.
Now, I'll go first because Aldo's going to give you something positive. So, let me just pile on and throw some kerosene on there. Everything you just said, Badge. He's not awful. Can make a few plays. Could be a good gatekeeper with a good defense and a good running game.
Yeah,
we heard that last year with Nick Foles, didn't we? Didn't we hear that exact same thing? Knows the offense. He's not gonna be great, but he's not gonna be bad. He's just gonna be that good, solid quarterback the Bears need to really go to the next level. Well, here we are. Another Andy Dalton. We got Andy Dalton, a guy who knows Bill Lazor, could possibly know some of the system. Not gonna win games for you, won't lose games for you. And here we are again saying, defense, bail us out. And we might not have Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney might be your number one. And we don't know what's going to happen on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Here we are. Go for it. Collaboration. Now, Aldo, tell us why Dalton's going to win MVP this year.
He's not. I'm just going to continue to say I don't think this is the end of the story. I do think that there has to be something else in the works. And a lot of people in the chat room are talking about Dalton's performance last year, like you guys were. Let's take a look at the overall numbers here. Everyone knows he's known as the Red Rifle. He's 6'2", 220 pounds. Last year, he was 4-5 as a starter, completed almost 65% of his passes for 2,100 yards, six and a half yards per attempt, 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Of course, he was playing behind an offensive line that is generally considered very good for the Cowboys, but had some injury issues last season. Here's a quick game-by-game breakdown that I borrowed from ProFootballReference.com. His big game was in Week 15 against the Philadelphia Eagles. He was 22 out of 30 for 3 touchdowns, threw an interception. But take a look at the numbers from Week 13 on. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and then that meaningless game against the Giants, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. I'm not saying this guy is Bart Starr or Johnny Unitas. I'm just saying that he is an adequate quarterback, and I hear what Buffon is saying. We don't deserve adequate, but this could be a piece for something bigger. And then let's
read off put that graphic back up and read off those read off those opponents. Go ahead.
I knew
read off the opponents because there's some people that are only listening to audio. So go ahead and those 4 games you were talking about. Go ahead and list the opponents.
Okay, well, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception was against Baltimore, and then the 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions at Cincinnati, and then the 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions at home against San Francisco, and then the 3 touchdown game was against the world's worst team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, you got me.
And then week 17, what did he do, Aldo? 0.
That was against the New York Giants in a really cold day. He threw 244 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was harassed all day. He was sacked 6 times that day. By that time, the Cowboys' offensive line had decided to go farming or whatever they do out there in Dallas.
my point was it's not to make you look like a jackass, I promise. But my point was to say we heard of this last year. Oh, Mitch plays really well against the average to non-average defenses. He can really turn it on. But when he's got to play against somebody that is a good defense, that's whenever they start to figure him out. Are we really just replaying the record, guys? Honestly, is that what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, guys, yes, I think it is. I think it was time for the Bears and Mitch to part ways. Unfortunately, I mean, to me, it's basically Mitch. You saw the factor say, look at him. I mean, Dalton might play with a little bit more confidence, but look at the numbers; they're the same. Now, to me, Dalton, he is a little less mobile, I think, in my opinion. I would have rather seen this organization, if you're going to go out and get somebody like this, I would have rather seen a Tyrod Taylor or a Jacoby Brissett. You just saw what the Texans gave to Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, it's a $12 million deal, but if he doesn't step on the field, it's like $5 million or less than $5 million. So to me, I just don't see where we're better off. Now, obviously, you have the draft. You know, I want to point something out too from Dan Pompey that he tweeted out, and I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, and a rookie who can eventually start give the Bears a chance to be competitive in the short term as well as the long term. And the price is right. Not a bad move.
I'm responding.
So everything that he said could still happen sans Andy Dalton, right?
Yeah.
So everything that entire scenario could still happen without Andy Dalton. And you'd have $10 million extra going against the cap that you could use if you wanted to go get a Trent Williams, or if you were going to try to sign Allen Robinson to an extension or something like that. So no, I have a hard time defending this or even seeing the positives of this because we're going to get the same crap.
I'm asking this question, John, and I don't mean to cut you off because already that is a tweet from Dan Pompey, right? So now I have one from David Haw. And I'm just preparing everybody for the press conference at Hallis Hall. So here's David Haw. There it is. Plan D. Dalton raises the offense's floor, limits its ceiling, increases likelihood Bears will draft quarterback in first 2 rounds. The move lacks ambition, but in a practical sense gives Bears chance to be competitive for a playoff spot in 2021, which might be Pace's goal. I mean, you see the Chicago media already setting up to almost fluff the nuts of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy in this press conference when they introduce Andy Dalton. Already on Twitter. Oh, guys, we understand. You couldn't get Russell, so here, you did the next best thing. Mitch Trubisky led your team to the playoffs 2 times. And yes, I'm stealing this from Mike North, God damn it, because he's right. He led your team to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 seasons.
Oh, God.
And now you're going to get this guy who now in Cincinnati, in 3 of 5 years or 4 of 5 years, he led the Bengals to the playoffs.
0-4.
Win a playoff game in those 4 or 5 appearances. So it's very – the similarities between him and Mitch are, I think you could have gotten Mitch lesser than what you paid for Dalton, in all honesty.
Well, you probably, but there was no way in hell they were bringing Mitch back, because you don't sit at the end of the year press conference and say, have we gotten the quarterback position right? No. Are we going to address the quarterback position? Yes. And then bring back the same guy that you just had. So there was that, the writing was on the wall. There was absolutely no way they were going to bring him back when they talked about not getting it right with him. So I didn't think that there was any way. But I've said this in weeks past. Isn't it like if Mitch Trubisky, and I tweeted this out and it got a lot of interaction, if Mitch Trubisky played for a different team and he had similar output and was hitting the market right now, doesn't he just seem like a guy that the Bears would go after? Like a guy who showed a kernel of promise, and then they're like, oh, we can fix that guy. Ooh, a retread? Ooh, at a bargain price? Oh, bring him to Chicago. That's our guy. So yeah, I understand. I understand exactly what's going on. But what do we? I know Ryan Pace's goal is ultimately to get to the playoffs and, well, let's hope to win a playoff game. But I'm looking at this from what I actually think the output would be. And what I'm seeing is, because they're adding an extra game next year. So you're not looking at 8-8. You're maybe looking at 8-9 or 9-8. And maybe they get that, that fun extra wild card spot they got this year, and they're picking at 20 again next year. So I don't want to be stuck in that perfect 8-8 or 8-9 or 9-8 or whatever it is, that the middle of the pack NFL consistently every year, and then it's like, well, every year we have pick 17 or 20 to 21. I'm just tired of that. And if you keep getting these middle of the road guys for middle of the road performance, this team would, and I'm stealing this from Dan Orlovsky, but this team would much rather nibble at mediocrity than choke on greatness. And this is exactly what they're doing.
Well, let's see if our good friend Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears has a more positive attitude about that. It doesn't look like it.
As he starts laughing right away.
Yeah, you're setting me up for failure on that one. Yeah,
I've been the only one offering a positive possibility. Do you have anything?
The positive is that it's a 1-year deal. The Bengals made him a long-term contract deal long ago, and Bengals fans were stuck in that mediocrity for 4 or 5 years by the time that was all said and done. So they're not tied to him multi-year the way they are, or I guess could be with Nick Foles, unless they work a trade there. But guaranteed money is not going to keep him in Chicago beyond 2021. So now instead of having one Nick Foles, you have two, and that's more fun, I guess, right?
For who? Who the hell is that more fun for? That we can talk about Nick Foles and Andy Dalton. Nick Foles has a better. He's won more playoff games than Andy Dalton has. But if you look at it, the production is going to be about the same. It's going to be middle of the pack. The defense is another year older. They could potentially lose a couple guys on defense if I don't know what the future for Akeem Hicks holds, but you're going to rely on your defense, and hopefully you can squeak out a few 17 to 13 games. You finish it 9-8 or 8-9 or wherever they're going to be at that next year, and maybe you get into the first round and get blown out by somebody at home. And so what does that do? And Badge, you brought this up earlier. Does it seal the deal for Matt Nagy and I can't even remember his name, Ryan Pace? His name's not worth remembering right now. So, but if they do a 9-8 season, that's another winning record. Maybe they make the playoffs again. Are we back at square one at the end of next season where George is saying, well, we saw improvement. They won an extra game. We went 8-8 last year. This year we went 9-8, and so we get into that extra playoff spot. I don't like it. I just think this is settling for let's aim. Let's not aim high. Let's aim kind of in the middle. Let's aim right there in the middle so we can maybe try to save our ass. I don't like it.
Nice and safe is sort of the feeling, but it's like a safe quarterback, but it doesn't feel like a safe move for Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. What's the point? I mean, you know what I mean? I guess there's no such thing as a safe. I mean, I guess Russell Wilson is safe because it's Russell Wilson, but you're giving up somebody picked. I mean, that's kind of its own different category. It just doesn't feel like this, that Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy can sit up there with a straight face and look at their offseason plan that they've had and say, you know what? Mission accomplished. We did it. This is it.
Unroll the banner.
Yeah, unroll the banner. Get the parade ready. They have. It feels like they have to have something else in mind, right? I mean, there's got to be at least some rookie quarterback. Maybe that's not trading up into the top 10 like I might like to see at this point. Like, I want to make a splash. Go get me a top quarterback. Maybe that's waiting at 20 and it's Mac Jones. And again, it feels like more of this safe option as opposed to, choking on greatness. Like you said, there's got to be something else, because you can't sit there with a straight face and say, we went from Trubisky and Foles to Dalton and Foles, and we're heading to the playoffs. Like, it's just, I don't think any NFL general manager can really sit there and truly sell that without having either some other plan in mind, or they had another plan and that fell through and this was their backup plan just to do something. That would be sort of the other possibility here. If they really don't do anything else, it means they really thought Russell Wilson was going to happen, or they thought Jameis Winston was going to take their deal, but Winston takes less money than Dalton to go back to the Saints. That tells me that the Bears were never really in play there.
Yeah. I got a question for you guys here too. And this is my question. Bill Lazor, Matt Nagy. Now you've got Nick Foles, who has the familiarity with Matt Nagy. Oh, and they were able to beat the Bucs last year during the season, guys. Matt Nagy and Nick Foles. They won the Super Bowl, in case you didn't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there. But then you've got Bill Lazor and his familiarity with Andy Dalton. Now, you're hearing reports from the national media that as of right now, Andy Dalton is the starter. Whose offense is he going to be running?
Good question.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Do we even know what Matt Nagy's offense? If we say
no idea.
Offense, I don't even know what our choices are at this point. Like, what is Matt Nagy's offense? But it sure feels like if they're getting Lazor's guy 1 year after getting Nagy / DeFilippo's guy, I mean, you would think they're kind of turning to Bill and saying, all right, you figure it out. You make this work. This is your quarterback we went and got, which says a lot about the trust that they're putting in Bill Lazor at this point. Because
desperation.
Yeah, maybe desperation more than trust. But like, you think it'll kind of generally be the same kind of thing for Foles and Dalton. They're both sort of slower quarterbacks that have trouble when they're under pressure in the pocket and feel ghosts and rely heavily on that number one wide receiver, AJ Green or Allen Robinson now is going to kind of be, like neither one are going to be like super vertical quarterbacks. They're going to be accurate for the most part underneath. Like, it's like, what's the point? Like, what are we doing? It goes back to the same thing.
What's the point?
Yeah. What are we doing? Like, what's the difference? It's like both of those quarterbacks are roller coasters, and it's like, so when Nick Foles is high, he's going to be the starter, and when he goes down, are you putting Andy Dalton in until he goes low? And then it's just like, it feels like Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston from a couple years ago in Tampa Bay, where they did this like back and forth. Whichever quarterback was playing well at the time was the starter. Like, that's what it feels like we're playing towards if Foles and Dalton are both on the roster week 1.
But we're not talking about the hot goalie in the Stanley Cup Finals. We're talking about the quarterback of a professional football team, and they consistently get for the people listening to the audio only version, we use those parentheses there, or excuse me, quotations, air quotes. But like you said, is there aspirations of moving up in the top 10, or are they going to go out? Hey, Aldo, you know me, and you know how I stand on Kellen Mond. They draft Kellen Mond in the draft. I'm sold. I'm good. Kellen Mond could be the quarterback of the Bears. I love the kid. I think that he's going to be a good quarterback. That's neither here nor there. But if they are going to do this, and Lauren, I want to get your opinion on this, because I said if their aspirations were to move up and get a guy in the top 10. Then what was the point of getting Andy Dalton? Like you said, what's the point? Because you just got a quarterback who has very similar skill sets to the one you already have, and he apparently knows the offense. That's why you brought him in, and that's why you traded for him rather than signing Andy Dalton to $3 million last year. You trade a 4th-round pick and a stupid contract for Nick Foles, and all of a sudden now Andy Dalton's much better than Nick Foles. Why? And so why, if their aspirations are to move up and get a guy in the top 10, then what was the Dalton move even about? Was it a signing for a signing's sake? I can't imagine that's it, but I don't know what else the reasoning could be.
Yeah, I was thinking about this with Alex Smith, because he was kind of the quarterback I thought the Bears may end up settling for, and to bring in for all the same things we talk about with Dalton, where it's kind of like, is he really better than Nick Foles, and similar familiarity. But like, I could see where if you're the Bears, you plan on drafting a quarterback and you say, all right, I want my starting quarterback to be my starting quarterback. He's going to focus on starting and winning football games for us. But I still want a veteran to mentor my rookie. I want that Chase Daniel to be there for, that type of quarterback. That Mark Sanchez was that early in his Bears career, where it's like, he's here as your backup quarterback, but he's more so your quarterback coach on the field. And so like I could make that argument that you sign a veteran quarterback, so whoever starts is going to be a starter, and then if Foles is your backup, he's your quarterback mentor, or if Dalton is your backup, he's your quarterback mentor. But where that gets derailed for me quickly is the contracts. Like, you don't sign Andy Dalton to $10 million a year to be your Chase Daniel, Mark Sanchez type quarterback. And I don't really want to pay Nick Foles $6.5 million guaranteed to just be a backup and be an extra coach on the coaching staff. So like, it would make sense if you sign Andy Dalton to, or Alex Smith to a veteran minimum deal sometime a little bit later in free agency when the market cools off, then that argument holds up a little bit for me. But as it stands now, with how much money both of those guys are making, it's too much for that rookie mentor role. I don't get it.
I got a question for Lauren. Lauren, it was a year ago, almost to the day before free agency started last year, that the Chicago Bears signed Robert Quinn to that $70 million contract. Here we are a year later signing Andy Dalton to a contract, and everybody's wondering what the hell, just like last year. But what are your thoughts about Robert Quinn? Because if there's going to be any success for this team, another playoff season, it's really going to start with the defense. And so can Robert Quinn under Sean Desai, based on the tape that you've studied and your knowledge of the game, can Robert Quinn come back and have an 11-sack type season like he did with the Cowboys?
Well, I know you and I were getting into this a little bit on Twitter, all the more so about Leonard Floyd, but it's the same type of conversation with Robert Quinn, right? The sack numbers are what we end up getting so focused on. And I saw a little bit later, one of the Pro Football Focus guys put out a graph that showed the pass rush win percentage over the last 2 years on the y-axis, and the x-axis was the average per year of the contract. And you can kind of see the teams are paying more for sack totals than they are how consistently a guy is rushing the passer. So all of that is still on a loop around with Robert Quinn. The Bears paid a premium after he had one of his highest year of sack totals. And I don't know that it's realistic to expect him to consistently put up that 11.5 number or whatever he was. But like, I still think he can be a quality pass rusher for you. I mean, that's what he does. He rushes the passer. And there was always going to be an adjustment period for him coming from, more of that hand in the dirt 7 technique defensive end in the 4-3 scheme. It's not drastically different, but it's different responsibilities and being asked to actually drop back into coverage a little bit more than he's used to. And all these different things, just, it's an adjustment. It's not drastic, but it's enough where it might take him a little bit of time to get more comfortable. And then plus you add in probably some underlying injury stuff there that's not publicly on the injury report, but a guy playing through stuff. I can't imagine Robert Quinn was fully healthy, just kind of given the level of play we were seeing from him. But I do think the Floyd comparison here is apt, because I think the Bears should get more from Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Bilal Nichols, etc. next year. And that will make Robert Quinn's job easier, much like Aaron Donald does for Leonard Floyd with the Los Angeles Rams. So like, I don't think, I'm not going to count on Quinn to get 10 sacks next year, but I think he can be a quality pass rusher. Maybe not worth the full contract, but he's got to do better than he did last year. I just don't think he's going to stay that bad, but I don't know that he's going to get back to Dallas Cowboys level sacks either.
Right. Just a quick follow-up, because I know we only got you for another 2 or 3 minutes. So what you know of Sean Desai, everyone's anticipating that he's going to bring back that Vic Fangio type defense and that sophisticated defensive backfield, hiding coverages and so forth. Do you anticipate that perhaps Eddie Jackson has a much better chance to play like the Eddie Jackson of 2018 under Desai's defensive coordinator leadership? And as an addendum to that question, what do you think Mike Pettin will add to this team? Because I guess his reputation in Green Bay, better than all of us here at the Barroom, he was known as having a lot of success with his defensive blitzes styles. And Aaron Rodgers said that he was really good at freeing guys up to blitz the quarterback. So what can you add about those two topics?
Yeah, so I think with Eddie Jackson, it's definitely a much better scheme fit where he can be more of that half field deep safety as opposed to the single deep spot. And he can really kind of focus in on a slightly smaller area of the field. He can still watch the quarterback, but he doesn't have to be responsible for everything. He can be responsible for 2 or 3 routes to that side instead of all 5. And that'll allow him to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more sure of what he's doing, as opposed to maybe thinking a little bit more out there and not being as comfortable. But I think a lot of his success is also going to depend on what they do around him. You know, they still don't have a starter next to him as we're talking now. They're going to sign somebody, but whether that's Tashawn Gibson again or somebody else and what that provides. And then also the slot cornerback spot. I mean, opposing offenses are always going to attack wherever the weakest area was, and wherever they can find their little advantage, that's where they're going to throw the ball. And so like in 2018, there wasn't really a super obvious place to attack. So they had to test Kyle. They had to throw at Kyle Fuller a lot more. They didn't throw at Prince Amukamara as much because it was more physical coverage, but like they weren't going in the slot as much against Bryce Callahan. You know, they weren't doing a lot against Roquan Smith in coverage. Like, so Eddie Jackson had better opportunities at the ball because the general coverage around him was better and the pass rush was better too. So like, if those things happen again, right, if you have enough talent surrounding him, he will step into a much better role. And I'm expecting a certain level of that, but I'm also not ready to just instantly assume Sean Desai is going to be an expert at this. He's probably going to get them back to doing a lot of the things that you want them to do, but personnel will play a lot into that too. And with Mike Pettin in there, I agree that I think he will add some different ideas for blitzing, but I really think the Bears are going to be careful about not giving Pettin too much control over the defense and too much influence and making him like this defensive coordinator hovering over Sean Desai's shoulders. I mean, it's a lot of like ideas and influence in that regard, and some pro scouting and stuff they were having him do, and some, you know, putting game plans together against opposing offenses as far as scouting them and what he should do. So I think we'll see some influence there. I know Packers fans were frustrated with how he would handle the secondary and the personnel in that regard. So if Pettin can focus on the front seven a little bit more and show some of those looks that gave Mitch Trubisky trouble, for example, like Aaron Rodgers referenced, a lot of different things up front where you're not sure where the pass rushers are coming. It's kind of that Rex Ryan front seven tree of like, you never know, you know, some guys are standing up, some guys have their hand in the dirt, and it's just a wide variety. Some of that mixed in would be a nice change of pace from the 4-man rush over and over and over from Chuck Pagano that we saw all of last year.
Lauren, thanks very much for jumping in here at the last minute and sharing your thoughts with us. This goes out on audio podcast also, so let people know listening on audio, your Twitter account and what you're working on and your podcast.
Yeah, so on Twitter at Cox Sports 1, I would say it's like Fox Sports 1, but with a C. Doing Locked On Bears podcast 5 days a week, doing some stuff behind the scenes with Pro Football Focus as well, and always delivering those Bears takes on Twitter. And so many times this afternoon, I'm walking down around my house. I said out loud many times, Andy Dalton? Andy Dalton. Like, I you know, you just can't get out on Twitter quite in the same way, but that was me all afternoon. So that's what you can expect.
And people in the chat room are wondering if you're eating any Nutella lately.
You know, it's been a long time, but I will always advocate for Nutella on your cheeseburgers. It is a good combination. The savory with the sweet, the chocolate in there. You can buy those Uncrustables that are usually peanut butter and jelly, but they sell Nutella versions. You use those as buns for your burger. Oh, it's sweet, savory, delicious treat.
John's
okay, Lauren. I was about to give you a compliment, and then you just. Well, okay. This is a discussion for an entire different time.
Have you had a peanut butter burger? It's the same concept. They're really good.
No. Okay, and this is for a different podcast.
On a burger, and it's
who are you people?
It's actually, I kind of agree with Lauren. It's actually really good.
I'm telling you, you get for the sweetness. Yeah. It's like put pineapples on your burger, pineapple on pizza. You get a little sweetness with your savory.
By the way,
this is pissing me off more than Andy Dalton is, but
happy to help.
All right, Lauren, thanks very much.
Yeah, real quick, Lauren. I was gonna say before that got derailed. I was gonna say, guys. Lauren is what I kind of aspire to be, because when he talks, it's very eloquent, very pointed, very calculated. Here I am foaming at the mouth like a bulldog, and I'm just screaming. I'm 5 seconds away from throwing my washing machine in rage and punching my screen here. And Lauren's like, it's really bad. It's poor. This is what they're doing. And I'm like, that's what I should be doing, but no, I'm going to rip out everything out of the electrical sockets and throw them in the yard and then kick a hole in my door. That's maybe that's what I do best. I guess I'm a role player. That's what I do best. But a solid delivery all around on that, Lauren.
You're too kind, John. And I think my secret is I recorded a podcast before this, so I had time to really kind of work through my thoughts, whereas you're kind of hitting it live and direct right from the soul. And I got my soul out in my living room walking around going, Andy Dalton.
I shouldn't take pre-workout before a podcast. I suppose that's probably the big problem.
All right, Mr. Cox, thanks very much. We'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks,
right?
Lord.
Hey, anytime, guys. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. He is great. All right, let's bring somebody else in. This gentleman is known as Neil Stopchinski, co-host of Neil, how are you, brother?
Man, you guys, I am trying really, really hard to keep the Patty's Day positivity going, and the Bears are making it awfully goddamn hard to do that. But I got my Irish whiskey right here, and I'm trying to keep the good positive vibes going. So,
So what was your immediate reaction when you saw the news on Twitter, Adam Schefter making the announcement?
you know, the immediate reaction, I think I just had to kind of take a step out of my body and have one of those like out of body experiences right fast and try to, you know, gather myself of what the hell is actually going on. You know, when all these ridiculous quarterback rumors started, I think Aldo, it was like 5-6 weeks ago, we were talking about Carson Wentz on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like one of the last things I said about all this was like, I think because we all know that everybody else in media is not going to do it. We need to do a really good job of tempering the fan base from getting either too pissed off or too low or too high. Right. Because one of two things is going to happen. Everybody's going to be, you know, amped up. Everybody's going to be just like we are today. Right. And so I think I'm kind of taking my own advice and trying not to be, you know, one way or the other, too high or too low, because I think, and I put it out there on Twitter. It was probably about, I don't know, 3 hours ago now. Objectively, it's a plus over Foles. If you look at it from an objective standpoint, it's a plus over Foles. You're talking about a dude that has 10 years of experience, 142 career starts, 87 and a half career passer rating, which is 0.2 higher than Mitch Trubisky. So for all the stat geeks out there, that's a win, I guess.
He's ahead of him in one category.
He is ahead of him in one category.
I guess it's an upgrade.
Slight, yeah, right. Definitely upgrade over Foles. I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, but I mean, it
does improve the room. It does improve the room.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. Hey, listen, in a vacuum, looking at this objectively, it does improve the room. All right, I'm gonna try and be like Aldo a little bit. Get some positivity flowing here, right?
It's like being on a sinking ship and someone throws you a Dixie cup to bail out the water. That's the minimal upgrade.
So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though.
Dixie cups.
Yeah. In no way is this thing fucking over. Right.
Right.
I don't know. Are we a PG-13 program right now?
How do we know? How do we know? They're going to try to put together some package to move up into the top 10. The other team's going to reject it, and that's who they're going to have in 2021. The platoon of Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. And don't get me wrong. I hope that there's something else to this. I really, really hope. But I'm just talking about history of this, not just the franchise, but this current front office. That why should we expect it? Like, I mean, to the common thinking person, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But we're talking about the Chicago Bears. So 100%. We don't know if that's actually going to happen. I hope it does. But if Neil, and I wanted to ask you this first and foremost, if let's just say they move up and they say we're going to get one of these guys. I don't think it's certainly not going to be Trevor Lawrence. No. So then it's basically you're down to 4. And so who might be the one that lingers enough that maybe they can trade up to 12 or maybe even 13, that they maybe don't have to give up a 2 first-round picks and then a second-round pick to package up with it, when they maybe only have to move up 6, 7, or 8 spots instead of 10, 11, 12.
Well, I think in my rankings right now, where I honestly think this falls generally across the league, everybody's got their different rankings and what they want and everything else. I think generically speaking, where this falls, it goes Wilson, Jones, Fields, and Lance. And I think Lance is probably the one that might dip a little bit, to be honest with you. I think Lance might be the one that's going to dip. I think Jones has dip potential. I don't think Fields is leaving probably the top 7 or 8. He's certainly not leaving the top 10. But I think, you know, Wilson's probably the number 2 guy on the board. I think Mac Jones has potential to be number 3. I think Field is going regardless 3 or 4. I think Lance is going to be number 5 picked. And so I think when you look at it, I mean, obviously, neither of the 2 guys in the locker room right now are the answer, right? Foles, certainly not. Dalton can at least get you out of he's started plenty of games. He's got the veteran experience. He can at least, you know, give you some of that veteran moxie, if that makes any sense whatsoever to the fan base. 100% doesn't. But obviously the solution is not in the locker room right now. It lies in one of these 5 draft picks, one of these first-round draft picks, these 5 kids. that hopefully Ryan Pace can still pull a Houdini act, do some David Blaine shit, move up into the draft and get. And, honestly, and if it's not one of those 5, if we hit August 1st, and August 1st is when I'm going to get pissed, boys. August 1st is when I'm going to get pissed. Because if we go into August 1st and it's either, it can't be one of the two. I really don't think either, it's going to be both of these guys on this roster. It's going to be Andy Dalton. If it's going to be Andy Dalton as a starter and a mid-round draft pick, you might as well fire Ryan Pace right then and there, because that is not the way that this football season was supposed to go. It was supposed to be go out and get a guy to replace Foles to be the bridge guy, and or move up in the draft and get one of these top guys to start him right away. And I say the O part in the sense that you don't know if he's going to start right away or if he's going to start in week 6. I'm just throwing a magic number out there. But the point is that if you go into the season with Andy Dalton as a starter and a mid-round project, we're in a world of shit. I don't
we're
think
in a year's world of shit, I think, at that point.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, not that we're not in a year's world of shit right now, because we've been in a year's world of shit with the exception of 2018, which I think was kind of a fluke, to be honest, at this point. I mean, we've really done nothing but go backwards since, a 12-4 season. I was at Bears 100 with the rest of the other Bears 100 freaking dipshits thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to freaking win the whole thing. Look at us. We're having this big celebration. And they go out and don't do shit. And then this year, the defense is going to be so much better. And, there's a quarterback competition and Mitch is the clear-cut winner and he wins it. And yet by week 3, he's on the bench, and yet then he's got to come back and save the season. As much as I think Pace is gone too, I think it's the end of Matt Nagy as well. And I honestly think that's a better thing for this organization than Ryan Pace. Ryan Pace each season gets lower and lower on my list of positivity in Chicago, but I don't like Matt Nagy and what he brings to this offense at all. I do. I think he's a player's coach, absolutely. But after that, to me, he ain't shit. He's a guy that in Kansas City, he was calling plays in a playoff game and didn't run the fucking football in the second half, and they ended up losing. Well, he's done that for 3 years now in Chicago, and yet he's still going to be the head coach of this football team. And he's clueless, I feel. Clueless.
It's a lot of rigidity, and you can't be rigid.
No, and you can't. And so I always talk about the offense and the defense in this franchise are never, ever at the same level at any point in history. Yeah. So Here we are. We look in the mid-2000s. The defense was dominant. You had Rex Grossman and a bunch of guys playing receiver, and they just never got it right. The offense kind of cut. Everything's relative, but for the Bears standards, the offense got better when you had Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Cutler, Forte, Bennett at tight end. The offense got better. That defense was horrendous. It was one of the worst we saw in the leagues. So this team never actually levels out with the offense and defense playing at the same time. And now we're seeing that cycle happen again. In 2018, a dominant defense that was a Super Bowl defense, and the offense couldn't get it done. Same in 2019. The offense could not get it done. And so eventually, guys, they have to kind of be in win now mode, because look at the defense, which is the strength of this team. Khalil Mack's getting older. He's going to be on the other side of 30. Same with Robert Quinn. Same with Akeem Hicks. Same with Danny Trevathan. And Kyle Fuller is eventually going to get on the wrong side of 30 if he doesn't get traded or whatever. So there's a lot. We're on the wrong end of this, whereas okay, the offense might be kind of serviceable. They need the offense to be able to make some plays, to at least try to keep up with the defense a little bit, because the defense is not going to revert back to 2018 this year. They're going in the wrong direction, but it's still a very solid defense. But they need the offense to pick up the pace a little bit. Mind the reference there. I'm sorry. Mind the pace. We're all minding the pace right now. But they got it. So I don't know if they're seriously in win now mode because they think they have a championship defense. Is Andy Dalton going to be the Super Bowl winning quarterback you need? Is that going to be the guy that saves Ryan Pace's job or Matt Nagy's job? Or that's the guy that all of a sudden is going to figure out this Matt Nagy, Bill Lazor offense where they're running end arounds on 3rd and 1 and they're doing all this happy horse crap
on
from the goal line. on the 1 yard line? Is that what they're is that the guy? Is that the guy that's going to make it all click? I don't see how that's going to happen. So I don't see any possible progression, especially if Allen Robinson doesn't want to play and he decides he needs to get traded or he's going to sit out. Now you got Andy Dalton and Darnell Mooney and a bunch of other young guys, and right now an offensive line that has some questions, showed promise, but still has some questions. I don't see how the offense actually takes a next step with the head coach who was the offensive guru, who was supposed to develop Mitch Trubisky, who got his guy in Nick Foles and was going to be this guy that transcended Chicago offenses. And they have not been able to develop some of their biggest picks. They have not been able to develop on either side of the ball. There's a reason there. I mean, Kevin White didn't work out. Leonard Floyd showed promise, but eventually left because he didn't develop into what they thought he was going to develop into. You can say the same for like Adam Shaheen. So these guys go off, and Leonard Floyd just got paid. So why can't they develop these guys? The guys that they spend a lot of draft capital on. Why are they unable to develop them? And then a lot of them go to other places and they play well. So
I think you got to look at the coaching staff, John. I mean, everybody talks about the Anthony Miller and Javon Wims with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Well, I know Mike Fury talked to both of those players prior to these games, and the second game, they talked to him they took up a whole meeting time for that. But if these players aren't listening to their coaches, your culture isn't what you think it is. And clearly they're not, because you had Javon Wims go out and do it during the season and Anthony Miller do it in a playoff game. And then Javon Wims with that drop in the end zone on a beautifully thrown ball by Mitch Trubisky. If he catches that, I think that game goes a completely different way. And we're not even talking about a quarterback at this point. Well, maybe we still are, but
we still are. Let's go ahead and be honest about that. But at the same time, we're talking about also not just the simplicity of listening to a coach talk about X's and O's in a position meeting room. We're talking about just being grown-ups and having discipline. Yeah. And, all that kind of stuff that should show up in a place that is supposed to have 25 years of good culture, right? We have guys going and like taking close fists to guys wearing helmets and dropping touchdowns and just being children. That's not things that happen at places with good culture. But I also think that you look at this also extraneously in the sense that I feel like anytime that we have an offense that tries to score points, it's an anomaly. We've been waiting for the offense to catch up to defensive football ever since the damn
101 years.
Well, I mean, shit. I mean, I'm saying at least since I've been alive.
Yeah.
Ever since we won that Super Bowl back in '85. We've been waiting for the offense to catch back up to the defense, and it's never happened except for these blips on the radar, these anomalies that show up here and there, Sexy Rexy and Jay Cutler and actually throw to Brandon Marshall and stuff. So I mean that's the thing that's irritating. But I think the thing that makes it worse than anything else is that I think we allowed ourselves to get wrapped up in the Russell Wilson's going to happen. You have what's his face. With all the cryptic tweets, this morning and going into the afternoon, Louis Riddick, and then we get wrapped up in the Deshaun Watson thing and thinking that that's going to happen, and the other 35 quarterbacks in between. And that's why I was going back, to my very first point was that if we just treated this with temperance from the very beginning and not get too high, not get too low, stay grounded, keep ourselves locked into reality here that we're probably not going to end up with a Hall of Fame quarterback starting next fall, that we're probably going to end up with a really good backup in the sense of Andy Dalton, probably the best backup in the league at this point. And then, Nick Foles, we just got to get him out of the building. And then the possibility still remaining there of, again, Pace doing something magical, moving up in the draft and getting one of the 5 studs. And I hear what you're saying, JD. I hear that, statistically speaking, you might not get all 5 of those guys working up, but what if they do? You know what I'm saying? What if they do? To me, there's a very low bust factor in all 5 of those guys. Trey Lance probably is the one that has the biggest bust factor only because he hasn't played football in 13 months. And that's the only reason why I say Lance. I think he's the one that has the most slip potential in the draft to where we could be sitting there at, 15 or 20, only have him move up a couple spots. And we end up with a guy that has a rocket ship of an arm and can, make plays with his legs. Is essentially what you kind of look for. But I think what it comes down to is that, the fan base is all pissed off right now. I don't think it's done. I'll get pissed off on August 1st if we end up with a 5th round quarterback and Andy Dalton as a star. That's when I'm going to lose my shit. But between now and then, I'm just going to watch quietly. I'm going to just check all this stuff out. Just kind of sort of psychoanalyze all the moves they're making and try to make sense of it all, because it probably won't make sense, but I'm going to try and figure out a way to make it make sense. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
John,
Neil,
I was just.
I had one quick question for Neil, and then I gotta get out of here. If they don't go first round quarterback, who's a potential guy that could slip into the second round that they could go after that could be that guy? I know it's like it's your scenario where you don't want to see it, but who's a second round guy that they could go out and get and could be that guy to develop under Nick Foles or Andy Dalton or whoever? Who could be that guy? And then follow up, why is it Kellen Mond?
Well, Kellen Mond to me, I think is a 4th round value guy. And I mean, Kyle Trask is a guy that I think is going to be the 6-1 on everyone's board, and he's going to be probably a 2nd round guy. But I think for the Bears, he has 4th round value. I don't think he fits very well with what they want to do at all. I think that Sam Ehlinger has a better chance of fitting in that offense than Kyle Trask does. And so, Kellen Mond is probably the next one I take after Sam Ehlinger. And the reason why I have him in the 4th round is because he is just so wildly inconsistent throughout the course of his entire career. He had that amazing game against Florida, which was his just absolute breakout game. And he follows it up with another couple games of just typical Kellen Mond stuff. And so, he's definitely 100% the guy in the mid rounds that I'm most interested in. But I think the reason why he's going to go round 4, or maybe round 3, round 5, whatever it is. But I think he's got round 4 value. I think he ends up going in the same neighborhood as where Dak went, because I think they have a lot of similar stuff. Guys that were athletic, that presented ability to make plays with their legs. Had really interesting arms. I think Kellen actually has a better arm than Dak did from standpoint of actual mechanics and accuracy. But I think what Kellen showed this year was the ability to grow in an offense. I talk about that game against Florida. It's a little bit more of an anomaly than it is the tendency, but he really did a good job of showing you that he has it in him. And I think he just needs a good developmental staff around him to bring that out. But ultimately, he is a developmental quarterback, and what he showed in the Senior Bowl was really, really fucking impressive.
Yeah, if he needs developed properly, then stay the hell out of Chicago.
John, I know you've got to go. You want to offer up a final rant or two?
No, I mean I got a lot of it out through this, and I appreciate the ability to. This is very therapeutic, so it's gonna save me a lot of smashing of my own property, but. But once again, I like I said to start off this broadcast, I'm done trying to figure out the franchise. I'm done trying to think that there's some kind of ploy, there's some kind of intelligent conspiracy going on. I'm tired of having hope that this isn't just thrown all together. Because you got a quarterback that you could have had last year, and you didn't like him enough that you had to go trade for Nick Foles and use draft capital and pay him more on his contract. And now the answer is the guy that you passed up last offseason, who he happened to be a backup in Dallas this year. So I'm tired of trying to figure it out. Maybe if you guys want to continue talking about the ultra intelligent goal or the conspiracy or plan that this team has, feel free, and I hope you're right. As a Bears fan, I desperately hope you're right that this is all part of some grand scheme that Ryan Pace has been building for 6 years, and this is all going to come to fruition. All of these things that he screwed up were all part of. I told you, I had it all figured out. I drafted Kevin White on purpose. I traded up for Mitch Trubisky on purpose. I went and got Leonard Floyd and then let him go on purpose. I went and got Adam Shaheen and I let him go on purpose. So I hope that this is all part of some great scheme that is just going to cultivate in this next transcendental quarterback coming to the Chicago Bears and leading them into a dynasty after 2021, 22 and beyond. I hope that's the case. I just don't see it. So I'm going to have plenty of more thoughts on this. I believe we're going to try to throw a Buffon 55 together tomorrow. So I'm gonna have to rest up and cool down, and then. Are you going to
sound like Lauren Cox tomorrow? You're going to come in all analytical.
I'm never going to be cool and calculated like that. As much as I will aspire to be that way, as much as I will try to be just that nice, cool, calculated, analytical mind, I'm never going to be that. We're gonna turn the mic. Exactly. Do you know my bloodline? I can't believe my screen isn't cracked. to be honest with you. This is what I am. I have that Neanderthal gene that my Uncle Doug always talked about. This is who we are. So I hope that I bring something to the table. This ever-growing, everything's on the table in Chicago. Just listen to the front office. And so this is what I bring to it. And I hope it's at least enjoyable to somebody, because I need this as a therapy. So I appreciate that. We'll have more content out tomorrow.
I live vicariously through you. When you're not around and you're not throwing these rants, then I have to do it, because then I start to feel better. But I can feel better by just listening to you. So thanks very much, John, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, brother?
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, All
right, brother.
All right. Guess who we have with us now? His name is Danny Shimmer.
Hey, there's Danny Shimmer.
What's up, guys? Happy Andy Dalton Day.
Oh. So clearly you love the move.
Oh yeah, it's no. Guys, it's the first thing I thought of when I heard it. I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, first of all, I chuckled. Second of all, I'm like, should I check Twitter now, or should I give it a little, couple minutes for it to kind of simmer here a little bit? And and then finally, when I turned it on, I was like, oh my god, guys, the two things I can guarantee you right now. And it's what March 16th at 7:25 p.m. here Central Standard Time. That two things guaranteed: the Bears are not picking 20th in the first round, and Andy Dalton will not be the last quarterback added to this quarterback room. So whether they're going to go get another veteran like a Marcus Mariota, someone we've been talking about before, whether they're going to continue to pursue this pipe dream of a Russell Wilson trade, I don't know. The only thing is, are they going to do what Neil and I have been clamoring about, is go get one of these five quarterbacks in this first round, trade up and give up, a first round pick from this year, obviously a first round pick from next year, if you have to, and go up and get one of these quarterbacks. And then now Dalton could be your bridge quarterback. For me, Dalton is a shorter, better redheaded Mike Glennon. Right, that's what they did when they got Glennon in 2017. They gave him that $16 million a year. And he lasted 4 games, and then they brought in Trubisky. So for me right now is they throw in, if they have to, they get a rookie. If they have to start Dalton, they have a guy that's competent, if you will. Starting week 1, week 2, or whatever, until the kid is ready, and then you throw him in there. So I think that's what they're going to do. Now, all reports are they went after Wilson. They went after Wilson hard. I'm sure you guys already covered this already, but it's if Wilson wants out of Seattle, stop pussyfooting around. Say, hey, get me out of Seattle. I want out. I want to go to Chicago. I want to go wherever you want to go. And because right now he's just saying, oh, you know what? If you guys trade me, these are the teams I want to go to. So I was like, oh, we don't want to trade you now. And apparently the Bears made a very, very, very aggressive offer, which I assume is multiple draft picks, probably multiple players off the roster. But just Seattle was not ready to go ahead and trade him at the moment. So I'll be shocked. I'll be floored if Andy Dalton is starting week 1 for the Bears, to be honest with you. So we'll see what happens. Just give us some time. Let's see what happens with the rest of the offseason. Let's see what happens with the draft. And then we'll go from there.
You guys are patient.
Badge, the main thing is I honestly cannot see Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy going into a season which they need to win with Andy Dalton being their guy at quarterback when they've told us everything's on the table, right? And this is the best you can do. So for me, it was more like, all right, this is just like, let's get a quarterback in case worst case scenario, we strike out in the draft, we strike out other trade opportunities, we strike out other free agent opportunities. Let's just get a quarterback right now. And that's someone that we could at least know can start us a game or two here, because there's rumblings that Nick Foles isn't going to be on the roster for very much longer either. So, so that might be, Dalton might be your backup, to whoever his starter is going to be. So, again, for me, I want to let it play out. I just cannot believe that they're going to go into the season, a season that they must win with Andy Dalton as their quarterback. That cannot be the case.
100%. I'm 100% with you on that. And that was one of the things I was talking about. I was like, if we are going into, if we start August, if we start fall camp with Andy Dalton as the one and like a developmental guy from the 5th round as the 2, or Nick Foles as the 2.
Pace and Nagy on the spot. I'd fire them on the spot. On the spot.
100%.
They should have already been fired, I think, is the larger issue, guys. I mean, this is something that, we talked about it all last season. I'm sure you guys talked a little bit about it during the season as well. they should already be gone. And we should already have a new GM and a new head coach in place that were given the responsibility of taking this shit show of a roster that it is. I mean, you've got some good pieces here and there on the defensive side of the ball. You have some playmakers on offense, a couple, maybe 4 or 5. But now you're at the possibility of losing Allen Robinson, who, I mentioned when I first came on, this is a guy who they haven't even spoken to about a contract since September. This is your number one receiver, and now you bring in Andy Dalton. So you franchise tag this guy because you don't want him to go anywhere, but you haven't spoken to him. And now you're showing that you couldn't get Russell Wilson, so Andy Dalton's your next best option. If I'm A-Rob, man, I'm fucking out. Like, thanks, but no thanks. I'll go play with fucking Sam Darnold in New York before I play with Andy Dalton.
Well, Badge, that might be the case. A-Rob might not be on this roster as well.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's open right now in terms of, getting draft capital to have more firepower to go get a veteran that they like or to go move up in the draft as well. So, I don't see them paying A-Rob what he wants, which is $20+ million a year. He's not happy with the franchise tag. Obviously, I think he deserves a long-term contract, but we'll see what happens there. Like I said, everything's on the table. There's no one here on this roster that I can say, well, other than like the guys that just restructured, the guys like Khalil Mack and Eddie Jackson, those guys, because they're, those cap hits would be pretty bad if they try to trade them this offseason. So, everybody else is available, man. And I can tell you, I think they're going to continue to try to get Russell Wilson, as much of a pipe dream as that might be. In terms of Deshaun Watson, Michael Lombardi reported on his podcast tonight that he's heard that Watson wants to go either to Denver or the 49ers. That's really where he wants to go. It's not Miami. It's not New York. It's not Chicago. That's where he wants to go. So if that's true, that's already been a pipe dream, right? And that's if the Texans even pick up the phone, right? They're not even picking up the phone and responding to these calls for these trade offers. So, they're going to try for Wilson. But I said, if Wilson wants out of there, he's got to go out to Seattle and say, hey, I'm done. I want out of here.
Danny, let me ask you this. Do you think that signing Germain Ifedi is going to convince Russell Wilson to come to the Chicago Bears?
Oh, my God.
Ian Rappaport, the Bears are bringing back the versatile offensive lineman Germain Ifedi on a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million. He found himself at the end of the season when he moved from that guard position to that tackle position, and thanks to all the people who mentioned it in the chat room, to make us aware of this. So
this is getting this day is getting worse and worse. Look at poor Neil. Neil's covering his eyes right now. He doesn't want to see that again. But I mean, and being fair, Ifedi played better at right tackle than he did at guard. Yes. However, yeah, I mean,
now I'm starting to feel like JD. Now the blood's boiling.
I still want to draft a young tackle, right? So I think that's still a second, third round range where they can go for that guy and bring someone to challenge. And maybe if Eddie gives you, the backup swing tackle, position, this Trent Williams stuff that they were supposedly, heavy and involved on Trent Williams. I think Brad Biggs I saw recently tweet out that apparently looks like he's not coming here, but I was curious in terms of, they're going to go spend that much money on a 33-year-old left tackle. In a draft that's got a lot of tackle prospects that's deep in tackle offensive linemen. So that was kind of curious, but that looks like that's not going to pan out either. So, but Ifedi coming back at $5 million again, that could be another swing tackle guy who can play both left and right. Not very well, but at least he can come in and spell you and if someone gets hurt. So, wow, yeah, I wasn't expecting to come in and talk about the Germain Ifedi re-signing here.
So the guy that we actually have to start at right tackle is going to be our 7th offensive lineman on the roster.
Just roll out Juan Castillo and have him roll into somebody.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Badge. That wasn't very good manners.
No, I totally get it, man. I think the Ifedi thing is a depth signing. As you guys know, you're the experts. I mean, we've talked about it the last couple of weeks. The draft is full of offensive tackles, so you definitely should be able to find one that can come in and start at right tackle right away, and maybe even left tackle. I mean, the Bears were in talks with Trent Williams. Are they looking to replace Charles Leno, or are they just going to go into the season with him and maybe they'll have somebody that they've signed or drafted who, forces him to compete for that spot and takes over.
I
Right.
love this. A year ago, I was worried the Bears would sign either Foles or Dalton. My imagination failed me. Of course, we signed them both. That's awesome.
Well, the worst part is they gave up a 4th-round pick for Nick Foles.
Yeah.
That is
They could just sign Dalton last year as a free agent if they wanted him that badly. But again, guys, I'm willing to take a little low key approach here on this one and just kind of let the whole offseason play out. Let's see what happens. Once we get through the draft and see what shakes out there.
What do you think it would cost to move up and get? Obviously, you're not getting Lawrence, but to get Fields or Lance or any one of those other guys.
Well, look at the picks that are available, right? We've talked about this before on Draft on Tap. Right now, I think number 2 pick, if they trade Sam Darnold, the Jets, that is, I think number 2 is going to be Zach Wilson from all things you read and hear. I think the 3rd pick with Miami is open for trade. 4th pick with Atlanta is available for trade. I think Cincinnati's locked in there at number 5. Pretty. They want their tackle, and I think they're going to go get Sewell, the kid from Oregon. And I think 6 is available, the Eagles. So you're looking at top 6 for sure. And now it's a matter of, if you're the Bears, what's your board look like? Obviously, I don't know the board, but just say for the sake of conversation that Trevor Lawrence is number 1, Zach Wilson's 2, Justin Fields is 3. You got to put down your guys and say, all right, what guy do we say, we're not going to do it anymore. And then once you start coming off the board, you go make a move, you get your guy. Now we kind of use the Chiefs trade when they traded from the 27th pick up to the 10th pick with the Bills to get Mahomes. And Aldo, you remember what that was? It was a 1st and a 3rd the next year, correct?
It's up on the screen right now. So yeah, it was Kansas City's 27th pick, which was on the 1st round, a 2017 3rd round pick, and the 1st round pick in 2018 for the Bills, who had the 10th pick overall in the 1st round.
Again, that could be more. Because it depends on how many teams are coming trying to get these players. So that that could be back and forth, a bidding war, if you will, on these picks. But again, I would just use that as a platform right there, as a bar. It's all right. I'll take the 20th pick this year, a 3rd round pick this year, and our 1st round pick next year. Right. If you're willing to give up 3 1st round picks or more for Russell Wilson, yeah, you're getting a potential Hall of Fame quarterback. But here you're going up and you're going to give up at least 1 or 2 1st round picks here to get your potential franchise quarterback. So that's what you're going to have to kind of figure it'll cost you if you want to go up at least from 20 to say 4 or 6.
Wow.
Let's take a look at some of Andy Dalton's tape. This is his 4th quarter comeback. I think this was against the Giants early in the 2020 season with the Dallas Cowboys. He led this drive to help win the game. He was very methodical, marching the ball downfield. It led to a game-winning field goal. He certainly has the veteran savvy, and look at him escaping the pocket. I mean, he's not Aaron Rodgers, or he's definitely not, Mitchell Trubisky in terms of escapability, but he has pocket presence, and he makes timely throws. And like I posted up earlier, his numbers last season were not bad. And then he had another excellent game, that 3-touchdown game against the Philadelphia Eagles. He again showed great awareness. He hits that pass going against the route and still has the arm strength. This guy has seen it all. And I think one of the reasons why they are looking at Dalton is because they want that veteran experience in that do or die season. I don't think they're ready, even if they get a Mac Jones, who I think is the smartest quarterback in this draft. I don't think they're ready to hand over the keys to their do or die season to a rookie. So that's why they got these 2 veteran quarterbacks, Foles and Dalton, although I'm still on record of going with Danny and other people who are saying that this is just a move and that the Bears are going to use either Dalton or Foles to trade up, and perhaps even Russell Wilson is still in the picture. If you look at the tweet that was sent out by Adam Schefter, he wrote, Chicago made a very aggressive pursuit of Wilson per sources, and the Bears were told that Seattle is not trading him at this
time.
So, like I said at the beginning of the show, it could be a post-June 1st trade because that is when the cap hit for the Seahawks would be much more reduced, and that would be a more opportune time to trade him. So maybe Pete Carroll said, "Hey, get me a veteran quarterback who I can use as a bridge quarterback because then I'm going to draft one of those guys. I'm working out a deal to move up." Perhaps that's in the picture. Now, that's pie in the sky, and I'm with Neil and Danny in the thinking that I'd rather go with a young quarterback. And then just one other point. Who's to say, really, if this is their do or die year, meaning Nagy and Pace? Remember that Pace would not answer the question how much time he had left in his contract? Maybe he's been told by the McCaskey family, don't worry. Don't worry, you'll be here a while. Just fix it. Go and fix it. Go and fix it. We love you like a son, because that's how they run the business. So maybe they're going to draft a quarterback with the idea, let's get a veteran to act as the bridge quarterback, and then we'll select a quarterback in the draft, and that's maybe the plan. I'm just speculating like everybody else, but
although just adding fuel to the fire here, as a Bears fans don't feel bad enough that they got Andy Dalton and Germain Ifedi coming back for another year. You're saying that Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are not in a do or die season? Although, come on, man. How much can Bears fans take in one night, man?
I am trying to give
phone just lit his car on fire. He's fucking infuriated right now.
He might be coming back on any second. He's on a date with somebody. I gotta call these guys.
Bullshit.
Somebody check on John.
In all seriousness, though, Dalton is not a bad, horrible quarterback. I mean, for me, he's a really solid veteran. And I saw those numbers. I'm like, 1 year, $10 million with the chance to go to $13 million with incentives. I'm like, those are really good backup numbers, right?
Better than what we could have gotten last year for.
Well, I think was it last year was like one year, $8 million or something like that. It was
17.
Oh, 17?
17?
Okay. 17. Okay.
Right. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think it might be right. Yeah. But that's not what he signed with Dallas. I think that's what he wanted to be a starter, I believe. Is what the numbers were being floated out there. However, I think those are solid. I mean, Tyrod Taylor got $12.5 million to be a backup in Houston. So I think these are good backup number, in terms of salary. So that's why I didn't let you, all right, like, and everybody, not just the fans, but everybody like on TV, all the, NFL Network guys were all saying Tyrod, Andy Dalton is their starting quarterback. I'm like, guys, pump the brakes. We still have a whole offseason. We still have a whole draft to go here. Andy Dalton, I think, is a bridge quarterback. If you have a rookie and that rookie's might not be ready to go ahead and start, week one, I think you start all Dalton week 1, week 2, however long it takes for the rookie to get ready. Then you give the reins over to the rookie. Possibly they haven't given up hope about getting in Russell Wilson, and maybe and now Dalton falls into that backup role, which is a really good solid veteran backup to back up your starting quarterback. So it's still a lot of time left here. If we were starting the season tomorrow, then I'd be upset right now if Andy Dalton's my week 1 starting quarterback. But let's give it some time. Let's see what happens. And because I'm not giving up hope here. Something big is going to happen at the quarterback position. It just now it seems to be gaining momentum. That's going to happen in the draft as opposed to the veteran route.
Right.
I hope you're right, Danny. I do. I just, I feel like it's last offseason all over again because we talked about the possibility of Nick Foles coming and joining the Bears organization, and I was completely against it. I wanted nothing to do with Foles. The guy had, won a Super Bowl MVP, but other than that, which I've ever done anything that fucking great. Obviously not. But other than that, he has nothing. He couldn't hack it as a starter. So they bring in a guy familiar with Matt Nagy and his offense. Well, him and Nagy couldn't even get on the same page. So now they're going to try it here with Bill Lazor and Andy Dalton, who, if you look at the numbers, apparently Andy had some pretty good success with Bill Lazor. Well, Lauren Cox is on with us, and I pose this question to you guys. Whose offense are we going to be running this season? Is it going to be Matt Nagy's, which we all know is fucking terrible? Or is it going to be Bill Lazor, or is it going to be a combination of the two?
Well, I mean, for me, it's going to be the offense that they were running a lot, or trying to run last year with Mitch Trubisky before they turn the reins over to Nick Foles. I think that's what they're going to. That's the offense that Matt Nagy is comfortable with. I think Bill Lazor's brought in here because of his experience in the NFL and being able to adapt to different offenses. Now we did see them go ahead and alter that offense when Trubisky was inserted back into the lineup, and make it a more of a play action rollout. Cutting the field in half for Trubisky. So that's the thing is and another reason why I'm looking at this Dalton signing and saying that there's no way this guy's going to be a starter because guys, if you were really going to go into a season with Dalton as your starter, would you not rather just have Trubisky back for another year and just give him another shot? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, at least it gives you something, right, in terms of the athletic ability to be able to do the rollouts and all that stuff. At least it gives you a little bit of something on offense, as opposed to just going into the season with Dalton as your starting quarterback. So that's why I'm like I said, I'd be shocked, floored, if you will, if Dalton's starting week 1.
Guys, I am going to get our good buddy Dan Aguirre on the phone.
The voice of the Barroom.
Dan and I did a show yesterday. That's loud. There he is now. Dan Aguirre, are you there?
I am, sir, and I hope my mic is okay. I've got it in the same position we had it last night.
This guy's pipes are just so beautiful. I get a hard on.
The voice of the Barroom.
Dan, you are on the air live with Danny Shimon, Neil Stopchinski, Ryan Badgley, myself, and there are almost 300 people watching us live, and everyone is on pins and needles wanting to know, what is your reaction to the Bears acquiring Andy Dalton to be their quarterback?
What's the rating of this show?
It just turned XXX when you joined us.
I've been saying for 2 weeks that, oh, no, not Andy Dalton. Not Andy Dalton. Not Andy Dalton. You would have to think if he was in the competition, I wouldn't be certain that Nick Foles wouldn't beat him out. But I've been reading at least other people. I don't know if there's any validity to it or saying, well, don't get too down. Maybe this is, Allen Robinson and Akeem Hicks and 2 first-round picks and Andy Dalton for Russell Wilson. I just don't see any of that coming into fruition. But there are some people intimating that we needed a quarterback to throw in the deal. I just don't have any hope for it. I don't know if this means they're moving Foles, but you'd have to think $10 million. He's probably going to start. It's a very uninspiring acquisition. But I'm not on the ledge the way so many other Bear fans are saying, I'm not wearing my gear. I'm going to be fishing. I'm not caring. I mean, fuck, I'm going to care. I'm going to watch. There's no way around it. I'm not buying his jersey. I did do that with Mike Glennon, and I was a fool. I will not be buying his jersey, but I will be rooting for the red pellet gun.
And I should say that John Buffone owns a Rick Meyer jersey. So we are nuts here at the Barroom.
I would love a Rick Meyer jersey. I think that'd be fun to have.
That would be fun. Yes, you're right.
But I'm an Notre Dame guy, so here we are.
Oh, gosh. Dan, so what is the likelihood, do you think, that this is just a chip that Ryan Pace is going to use to acquire either a draft pick earlier in the draft and get his franchise quarterback, or a chip to acquire a veteran quarterback?
I would think that the veteran quarterback is there. It seems like we're married to this guy for a year now. I hope that I'm wrong the way I was wrong with Cairo Santos. And boy, did he tell me to go fuck myself and make 26 consecutive kicks, and I'll take it. So maybe Dalton can do the same thing. But that is at least some optimism, what you just said. If they're shopping Anthony Miller per Adam Schefter, that carries a lot of weight. Obviously, they could trade A-Rob, which none of us want, but that's a possibility, and always Akeem Hicks, which we don't want, but it remains a possibility. So maybe there is an opportunity to move up in the draft and get one of these 4 quarterbacks, not the one from Clemson. Obviously, he's going to Jacksonville. But maybe we can steal one of the young kids. And if in conjunction with Dalton and maybe Foles and the kid, and the defense plays better, maybe there's something, but it's hard for me to fathom that this is their win or you go home kind of season, and they signed Andy Dalton. Like, why not? I mean, God, I would have been on Fitzpatrick first. I would be on Mariota first. I'd be on Jameis Winston first. Like, why Andy Dalton? And then reports came out that they really wanted him last year. Like, oh, fuck.
I didn't see that.
Why do we think Dalton's better when Mitch had better stats than he did last year?
Yeah. Well, that is the big question, guys. I'll throw it out to the rest of you guys. What do you think about Mitch Trubisky? I know an hour or so ago, Tooch was in the chat room, and he said probably what happened with Trubisky is that his agent said, we're moving on. And so because a lot of people believe that Mitch Trubisky would have been a better option than Andy Dalton. Or it could be that the Bears just said, hey, Mitch is not even in our plans. What do you guys think? Stop. I'll begin with you.
If I'm Mitch and I got benched for Nick Foles, I'm pissed and I'm out. I mean, it's just plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm better than Nick Foles. I put up better stats than Nick Foles. I've given this team more wins than Nick Foles. If you're going to bench me for Nick Foles, and especially after he looked as horrendous as he did throughout the course of the entire year last year, and not give me a chance until the very tail end to make something of what has otherwise been a miserable season. Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement that he and his agent are probably like, hey, we're out, dude. We're not dealing with this ridiculousness anymore, and that's probably the way that went down.
Badge, what do you?
Can I give you real quick, Aldo, a breaking news?
Please.
Emmanuel Sanders just signed with Buffalo per Adam Schefter, 1 year, $6 million.
1 year, $6 million. Emmanuel Sanders. I was sort of holding out hope that he might be available to the Chicago Bears. Out of all those veteran wide receivers out there, there's still T.Y. Hilton. There's still several other names. But I got to believe that if Allen Robinson is going to be used as trade bait to move up for this draft pick, then they have to pick up a veteran wide receiver. Anyway, Badge, what do you think? What are your thoughts on Mitch?
I mean, I said it, during the season when he came back from being benched. I mean, he was out. I wouldn't. I mean, he was nothing but the scapegoat in his entire career here, with the exception of 2018. But even then, he was getting the blame and everything. That it was all Mitch. It's all Mitch. And it's the famous Greg Bragg saying, it's not all on Mitch. It wasn't all on Mitch, but man, oh man, did Matt Nagy fucking really make it seem like it really was all on Mitch. Now, for those of us who could recognize that it wasn't on him, that we could see the other factors in the game that were causing some of these issues, I knew 6 months ago Mitch wasn't coming back. The only way I saw him coming back here is if they won a Super Bowl last year. Now I figure I'll be dead before they win another Super Bowl.
Danny, your thoughts? You were done with Trubisky, right, Danny?
I mean, I was done personally with Trubisky in terms of knowing what he was. I knew his limitations. The kid is an awesome kid, and he, he's a guy competitor, and you'd like to see him compete and all that stuff. However, in terms of you got to win from the pocket. If you can't win from the pocket as a quarterback, you're basically handicapping your offense, and that's what he did. The Saints, figured out what they were doing, rolling out all the play action. They pretty much blitzed them as soon as he tried to roll out. So, he couldn't do it. Now, I was told, Mitch is going to get a chance to compete for a starting job. I've heard anybody talk about Mitch Trubisky. Now, there's like some rumblings about the Saints possibly bringing him in. As well, they already have Taysom Hill, and then they just signed Jameis Winston. What are they going to bring Mitch Trubisky in there for? So we'll see what happens. I heard Washington was going to bring him in as a potential starter. Like, no way. So Washington went with Ryan Fitzpatrick over Trubisky. So that tells you what the league thinks of Trubisky. I'm telling you that the league doesn't have Trubisky in high regards, guys. I've talked to scouts, and they just don't think he's going to be a great NFL quarterback. Is he going to be a solid backup? Sure, potentially, but he's not going to be a starting NFL caliber quarterback. So for me, the Trubisky train was gone. That wasn't an option for me. My thing was either these pipe dreams of Wilson or Watson, or go get one of these guys in the draft. So obviously the Wilson train looks like for now, right, that it's not happening, but we'll see what like I said, what plays out the rest of this offseason. If Wilson really wants, he's going to have to go in there and say, I want to get traded. So we'll see if he forces the Seahawks hand to trade him. But say that doesn't happen and the Bears move on to the draft. I've been talking about this all year. Guys, go get one of these quarterbacks, move up in the draft, bring him in, and now you have a potential, franchise quarterback, if you will.
Dan, I was going to ask you, what are you going to do with the 10 Mitch Trubisky jerseys you have?
I keep all my jerseys with the exception of the Mike Glennon one. I did cut that up for 100 proof. If I could respond to Mr. Shem in just a moment, though,
Sure.
and more than likely he's going to be correct, and I'm not just trying to be the contradictory asshole or something, but I just, for history's sake, it's worth pointing out that Jim Plunkett was the first pick in the draft and failed in New England. He failed in San Francisco and then suddenly was reborn in Oakland and was Super Bowl MVP after they said, you suck, you're a fucking bust. And then he comes back and wins 2 Super Bowls in his 30s. So what I'm saying is that is obviously an anomaly, but it is plausible if Mitch could get in the right system with the right coach that believes in him and it didn't just seem to backstab him the way Nagy did, constantly blaming him for everything as opposed to taking any blame for himself. You know, he just used Mitch as a smokescreen, you know?
Sure. No, and you're right. And Rich Gannon is another great case. Rich Gannon also was a guy that ended up being a backup, then ended up being a Super Bowl, NFL MVP, played in a Super Bowl. I think Kurt Warner, a guy who was in Arena League, came in and now he's in the Hall of Fame. So, those kind of stories do happen. You do see that, guys go from a different situation, the circumstance changes, they get into the right coaching, they get, like the right coach that gets a hold of them. And next thing you know, they become better players. And could that be a possibility with Mitch? Sure, he's still young enough. What is he, 20? Is he 27? I think Mitch is 26, 27 years old. So, if a guy like, say, a Kyle Shanahan gets a hold of him, or a guy like, Sean Payton, guys that are offensive gurus, guys that they can utilize them and maybe help coach him up a little bit. I could see that happening because, like I said, Mitch's issue has never been physical. He's got the athletic body. He's got the legs. He's mobile. He's got the arm strength. It's just from the neck up. If they can just get that game to slow down for him in his head, I think Mitch's got a chance. But, like you said, it wasn't going to happen here with Nagy. It may never happen. Who knows? But it's definitely a guy. I in terms of him being in Chicago, I think he was done, a while back.
Yeah, and a more recent example is Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill had that kind of same makeup as Mitch Trubisky, limited college portfolio, came into the league. And if you remember watching Hard Knocks, Tannehill didn't know that the sun rose in the east and set.
That was Goff. That was Jared Goff.
Was that Goff? Oh,
yeah.
Well, Tannehill wasn't much smarter, I think. So, and then he gets traded to Tennessee, and he starts to perform at a much higher level under a different system. But I do agree with you, Danny, that there are just some certain processing things that it just looks like he doesn't get it. And of course, his biggest problem here in Chicago is that he had a head coach who just was too stubborn and would not change the offense to suit his limitations. He did certain things. He took certain things out of the playbook, but he still wouldn't listen to his quarterback who said, this is what I prefer to do. So good luck to Mitch Trubisky. Danny,
I have a question for each of you guys related to the coaching staff. We've watched them now draft Mitchell Trubisky and him come in. They went and got the head coach that could use his system for a mobile quarterback. And now you've seen Mitch Trubisky fail. You've seen what opportunity Chase Daniel had. I mean, yeah, he beat the Lions twice, but lost to the Giants. Then you see Trubisky come back in and doesn't perform well. Then they go to Foles, and it's going to be a quarterback competition, and Trubisky played better, so he beats him out. And by week 3, Foles is the starter. What from this coaching staff shows you guys that they can take a now drafted quarterback and make them a player? Because to me, none of them show me shit. This offensive coaching staff can fuck off to me.
Well, I mean, if you're asking me, Badge, first of all, this coaching staff wasn't here when Trubisky was hired. Remember, it was John Fox and Dowell Loggins. Those are the guys that were coaching the Bears when they made the pick. So, from what Louis Riddick was on, I forgot one of the shows, and he had mentioned that he knew that in terms of the whole draft process, going it through with KC, Matt Nagy was high, obviously, on Mahomes, but his second guy was Deshaun Watson. So that's a guy he would have gone with. So, that right there tells me that he knows quarterback play, can scout quarterbacks. Now, the proof is in the pudding, right? We'll see what he does here. If he's given an opportunity to go ahead and scout these quarterbacks and he gets the right one, then we know that he knows what he's talking about. Now, in terms of coaching up, you're right. I have a huge problem with this coaching staff, this offensive coaching staff, especially the receivers coach. Mike Fury. Look at the receivers we got. Anthony Miller has digressed. Yep. Riley Ridley, 4th round pick, can't get dressed on Sundays. The Javon Wims showed some promise in the first year of his career. Next thing he's gone down. It's like, who has he helped out, right? And if you can go on down the line here in terms of this offensive coaching staff. Now, last year they made some changes, brought in a new tight ends coach, new offensive line coach. So we'll give those guys a couple more seasons, if you will, to see what they can do here. But yeah, there's a ton of questions here, and no doubt, Aldo said it earlier, Nagy could not adjust to the strengths of Trubisky. It took him a benching and then a 6-game losing streak for them to bring him back in and then make the adjustments to him. Yeah. And again, Nagy's got this system, and this is how he wins, and this is, he wants the quarterback to run the system. But yet sometimes the quarterback just can't process the way you want him to process. You just can't run the system. So you got to play to the strengths of your player. And I think once they did, although they were still, limited offensively, they did show production. Mitch showed, progression in terms of being able to get out of the pocket, make some plays with his feet and his arm. And I think we saw some of the bright side of what Trubisky can do. So, if he gets with a coaching staff, Trubisky that utilizes that, and again, progresses, him at the next level of his career in terms of in the pocket, processing, footwork, motion, all that stuff, then you can see a guy that's going to be, greatly improved from what he showed us here in Chicago.
Neil?
Yeah, I think the guy that comes in has to be pretty independent, if that makes sense, and it doesn't have to be one of those situations where you got a young kid that needs a lot of development that is got to hinge on what this coaching staff can do for him. And I think with at least 3 of the 4 guys that we have a realistic shot of falling into in this first round, I think that's what you'll have, because I think Fields is a dude that has a history of improvement. I think Mac Jones 100% does, because the first time we saw Mac was against Mississippi State, and he looked like deer in the headlights guy, right? And he went from really barely being able to function to being arguably the best quarterback in the draft. And so and that was only over the course of about a year and a half. And then Zach Wilson is a guy that I've been pounding the table for since August. So I think what you have is 3 guys there that have proved it, not only from a standpoint in college of being able to progress and grow and develop, but also have done it over the course of not just 1 year. Trey Lance, I keep saying Trey Lance is the one guy that has probably the biggest bust factor, but I still don't even think it's that much of a bust factor. I think he's got a bunch of natural tools, and I think he's got a bunch of football blood in him that a lot of this that's going to come to him in the next level is going to be natural, and he doesn't have to really hinge on being developed as much as some of these other guys do. And so between Zach and Mac and Justin and Trey, I'm not going to put a whole lot of emphasis on how much they can develop the young man, but rather how much they'd be able to win with the young man, being able to develop an offense around the young man, if that makes any sense. Because I think all 4 of those guys are intrinsically motivated, and they're going to be better regardless of what happens from a player development standpoint or a coaching standpoint. I think all those guys are alpha males.
That's the part that concerns me, is the fact that it took them so long to make their quarterback comfortable in the offense. To me, and maybe I'm the outside thinker, but to me, obviously they didn't draft Mitch, but they came in, they had to work with Mitch. So now you want to take and play to that player's strengths. And in 2018, it kind of looked like they did that a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then in 19, they tried to go back to Nagy's way. And for most of the season, this past season, that's what they tried to do. And it finally was a 6-game losing streak where they finally said, okay, enough's enough. Let's try something different. And they started playing to Mitch's strengths. I don't trust them to do that at this point.
And that's one thing that drove me up the damn wall was in 2018, it looked like they were trying to play towards Mitch's strengths. And all of a sudden 2019 happened and this past year happened. And what happened to, encouraging him to make some plays with his legs or get outside the pocket or, I understand that, from the neck up, he's mainly a one-read guy, but at the same time, they were at least able to, develop a game plan to suit the fact that he was a one-read guy and get him outside the pocket and encourage him to use his legs more. The amount of times that he's used his legs in the past 2 years versus that 2018 season when he was a Pro Bowler, I think he ran and was more productive in 2018 alone than he was the past 2 years.
Yes.
Dan, I know you've got to go back to your job. Dan is a DJ over at the Chicks on Dick's strip club. So, Dan, why don't you offer up a final thought or two?
Okay. In terms of trying to be positive, let me, before I get to that, they've just, I don't know if you talked about it on air, but they re-signed Ifedi.
Yes.
You have to assume Ifedi's going to be the right tackle then, because you got Mustafa at center and Daniels and Whitehair, you would assume would be the two guards. And then they're talking about maybe Williams at left tackle. I know Leno's a friend of the Barroom and all, and he takes a lot of shit from a lot of people, and he's okay, but you would hope that they could upgrade the left tackle position, even if that's with a draft pick. I hope that they don't throw those same five guys out, regardless of who the quarterback is. But that's just my opinion. But trying to be positive, I saw Dan Pompei praise this signing, and he knows more football than I'll ever know. He single-handedly got Urlacher in the Hall of Fame despite not deserving it. But okay, that's controversial. To be at least in the first ballot, but to be positive, I think, and no, I'm not being facetious here, Andy Dalton's been in the league since like Obama's first year in office. So he's got some pedigree to the point where he's not going to take Nagy's shit. The same thing for Nick Foles. If either one of these guys are in there, Mitch was, to his own detriment, a polite gentleman who called Nagy sir. So he wasn't going to go to the press and complain about his coach. But if one of these other quarterbacks in the middle of 2021 is getting blamed for something that they know it's not their fault, it's the coach's fault, or he's the reason we're losing, and the ship is going down, they're going to tell you. And as Bear fans, all of us seem to, I think, predominantly wanted Nagy gone. So maybe that could be the last strike. If we are losing, they could. I always think they could fire him and put Mike Pettin in, but I want to stick consistent to what I'm saying. Maybe Pace goes too. He signed the redhead and Mike Glennon, and he signs a redhead to bookend it with Andy Dalton. The two gingers, all that combined, all that madness, and you're gone. So maybe Dalton exceeds our expectations, or it's the last stand for this entire regime. Either way, we can hope. Again, we suddenly, the defense plays better. You go to 9-7, 10-6, somewhere out of nowhere, or you go back farther, and then everybody's gone. So either way, we could make a story for the end of 2021 being happy. We got rid of Pace and Nagy, or, well, fuck, man, we made the playoffs. Who saw that coming? I'm going to care. I'm going to watch. I'm going to be hopeful.
Either way, you're buying an Andy Dalton jersey is what you're saying.
The only way I'm buying an Andy Dalton jersey is if that motherfucker sweeps the Packers.
Me too.
At that point, I'm in.
I'll buy jerseys for everyone at the Barroom. All right, Dan, thanks very much. We'll let you go, and I really appreciate you jumping on, brother.
All right, you all be well. Thank you, gentlemen.
All righty.
Thanks,
Right,
Dan.
Dan.
Badge, I know you've got to run too, so I'll allow you here to share your final thoughts. Do you have any optimism to share like Dan did?
I mean, listening to Danny and Neil, Danny always kept me in check. So, having him and listening to him, and yes, we've got to let it play out. I'm just not confident. I mean, I'm the negative guy, I think, and on the network. I'm just not confident in Matt Nagy at all. I don't think Andy Dalton is that bad, but like Danny said, if we're going into week one with him as our starter, I definitely won't be paying for Sunday ticket next year. I'll wait and pay the $100 and watch the shit show on Wednesday.
Badge, all I gotta tell you, Badge, is if the Bears go into training camp and either Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, or Trey Lance are on this roster, feel good about it.
There you go.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping. I
Sure,
just
man.
I don't know. I'm waiting. I was fired up. You calm me down, Danny. I think that. Neil, you're a calming presence as well. Then Eldo's always calmed me down. Somebody has to. So at least I got the three of you guys to do
Yeah.
that.
I was okay
But
until the
I
Ifedi
just
news dropped, but you know.
yeah, I was good. Yeah.
That whole calming down badge started when we were rooming together in Mobile.
Oh,
I will tell you what,
I got stories when we go to a rated R version of the show.
thanks so much, guys, for having me, Eldo. I appreciate it. And
You bet.
I mean, I'll end it as I always do with a bear down.
Well, bear down, and also make sure you catch Badge and his fellow tailgaters Sunday at 10 a.m. Central. They're also going to be holding a contest, so get a hold of Badge on his Twitter account if you want to be a part of that contest. They're going to give out a prize to somebody who gets through the trivia. We got some really good questions coming up. Badge and the crew always do a great job, and I can't wait to hear all of them talk about.
Oh, dude, the chat is our text thread is freaking. The guys are pissed.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun show on Sunday. So, Badge, thanks a lot again.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Grab Badge.
All right, I'm left with you two guys, and let's wrap things up here and get final thoughts. And frankly, you know, I'm like I've said a couple times on the show, I am of the desire that we've got to bring in a franchise quarterback via the draft, and Mac Jones is the guy that I would be happy with if he fell to 20 or we had to move up to get him a few slots or stuff. I mean, there have been some. I've been watching NFL Network all day. There have been some people saying that Mac will drop to number 20. I just don't see that. Not with so many teams in need of a quarterback. I mean, there's a lot of NFL teams looking for a quarterback now. So I just don't see Mac Jones lasting to 20. So anyways, you guys talk about the quarterback situation, and then we'll wrap things up here.
Go ahead, Danny. Okay, yeah. So, you know, I think one of the original thoughts that I had, Aldo, Danny, and I don't know if you were listening to when I first came on, but you know, one of the original thoughts I have is obviously none of the two guys in that room right now are the answer, right? None of those two guys are the answer, and I think that one of those guys is 100% out the door by the time we hit August, and that's going to be Nick Foles. If it's like you were saying, bad before he got off the line here, if it's Andy Dalton and it's one of those four guys that we talk about on a weekly basis, I feel like, then I'm gonna be feeling pretty good about stuff. Now I'm not going to riot in the streets of Chicago. However, if it ends up being Andy Dalton and, you know, a developmental guy from round 5 or 4 or 6 or whatever they decide to do with their quarterback situation in the draft, and it's not one of these, you know, 5 potentially surefire, you know, options at being a franchise quarterback, the face of the franchise, then, you know, again, it's going to be bad news. It's already bad optics. You know, we went from the potential of you know, Watson, Wilson to Dalton, and it just looks bad. But again, that also comes from the lack of temperance from the Chicago media and from our fan base, just trying to be based in reality here. So I didn't think that Watson or Wilson was going to be realistic from the start. I thought from the very beginning that the solution is going to have to come from the draft, and it's going to have to come from picks 1 through 10 or 12, or, you know, whatever we end up being able to magically do, you know, pre-draft to get ourselves in position to get a quarterback during draft. And so I'm holding out hope. You know, I think you and I are on the same page where we're just sort of trying to, you know, maintain, you know, calmness for the entire fan base at the moment, and not get too angry, because it is a long way to go, man. It's a long way to go. We still got a month and a half until the draft, and we still got 5 months until, you know, training camp. And, you know, there's a lot that's going to happen over the course of these next 5 months and really the next, you know, month and a half. And so, you know, it is what it is right now. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm happier that Andy Dalton is the one taking the snaps rather than Nick Foles or Mr. Trubisky. And so from that end of things, I think the very first thing that I said is that objectively, this is a plus. This does in a vacuum improve the room. And I'm going to maintain, you know, a calm attitude about it and be as positive as possible. And, you know, just patiently watch what this front office does between now and the draft, and between now and August.
Right. And I think good thing you brought that up, because everybody remembers Dalton from his latter years with the Bengals, and where he was, the team sucked around him, and he was hurt and it was ineffective. But remember, he led the Bengals to playoffs 4 straight seasons. He made 3 Pro Bowls, right? So this guy's got some talent, and he's got the experience, as Dan Aguirre touched on earlier. So this is a guy that if thrown into the battle, I think will be a solid, a terrific backup, and a guy that could win you maybe a game or two if your starter is hurt. But again, like you said, if you're going into week 1 and Dalton's your starter and your backup is a developmental kid, like say a Davis Mills from Stanford, for example, who I like, but he's nowhere near ready to contribute within a year or two. I'm pissed here, because I'm like, all right, you guys went. This was your final, prove it season, and you guys are going to battle with Andy Dalton as your only real veteran, quarterback. However, like I said, let's let the season play out. Let's see what happens in terms of potential trades for other guys. I know Marcus Mariota is not a guy that a lot of fans are hot about, but he's a guy that could potentially be available as well. Do you bring him in and compete with Andy Dalton? Again, that name doesn't make fans happy, but it's another quarterback that's been productive in the NFL, has won a role playoff game. I think a lot of people forget about that as well. So injuries, I think, have hindered him as well in his career so far. So that's another name to keep in mind there. But again, if you end up after the first round of the draft with one of those 4, because we all agree, we all think Trevor Lawrence is going number 1, so we're never going to mention his name here as being a possibility. But the Bears come away from round 1 with either a Zach Wilson, a Justin Fields, a Mac Jones, or a Trey Lance, whichever order you guys prefer. But one of those 4 comes, to the Bears. I'm feeling good, because now you go into the season, you let the young guy compete with Andy Dalton. You see through training camp if the young kid is ready to go. Now, if it's a Mac Jones, I think Mac Jones has a pretty damn good shot at beating out Andy Dalton for the starting job. If it's a Trey Lance, maybe he might need some time to sit on the bench and kind of just get used to the NFL, the way NFL works. Who knows? But Dalton starts the first week or 2, and then the kid takes over. That's how I'm looking at it. So. Right. That's what I've always preferred. I just didn't think they would go that route, because, I was under the assumption that they got to win or go home for Nagy and Pace. So, but if that's how it turns out, is they end up with one of those four rookies, the quarterbacks, I'll be happy with that.
And in terms of mentorship too, I'd rather Andy Dalton be the guy that tries to bring a guy under his arm than either of those 2 guys as well. Certainly Nick Foles. So, I think, in terms of temporary fixes, again, it's not a fix, not calling it a fix, not calling it a solution by any stretch of the imagination, but in terms of temporary fixes, it does improve the room, and just gotta see where it goes.
My slight surprise was, if you're going to bring in a kid like Andy Dalton, why not go get Alex Smith? Do you have issues in terms of his injury? Is he not healthy enough? Do you not think that if he had to start, that he could complete a season or 2 or whatnot? Because he's a heck of a mentor from what he did with KC, with Mahomes. The guy, before he got hurt till towards the end of the last season, he was playing okay. He wasn't having a great season, but he was a guy that came back from a near life death situation there, and came back and got back onto the field. And we know him and Nagy are real close, so I was curious there. But like I said, Dalton has the ability to like I said, win you a game if needed. Is he going to be a guy that I'm going to be excited about, for 16 games? No. Is he a guy that I expect to start all 16 games for you next season? No. So let's just let the offseason play out. Let's see what happens to the draft, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Guys, this Germain Ifedi signing at the right tackle position has me thinking that perhaps this is part of the master plan, because they're going to trade so many draft assets this year to move up to get one of those franchise quarterbacks, or in the very, very slight chance that they're going to acquire a veteran like a Watson or a Wilson, that they won't have the draft assets to draft an offensive tackle, even with this rich class of offensive linemen. So they might be getting rid of the first round of the 20th overall pick, the 56th pick of the second round, and then a future first rounder to move up. Maybe that's why Germain Ifedi was signed at a $5 million contract, because he's going to be taking over for Bobby Massey, and maybe Leno is we're stuck with Leno at left tackle for a year because it will be you won't have a replacement unless a bargain basement tackle emerges. That's what I'm sort of thinking. I just in my heart, I feel like this is not over. Andy Dalton is just one step in some dominoes that are happening. I can't believe that Ryan Pace is so stupid that he would do Mike Glennon again. Right. And I know that he's better than Mike Glennon. I get that, and I appreciate what you guys have been saying in your evaluation of this quarterback. I agree with you. I thought he played really well in those years at Cincinnati. He was burdened by Marvin Lewis and some other issues at Cincinnati. Probably would have won the playoff game if under different circumstances. But I just feel like this is not over. And my advice to all Bears fans is let's not think that, it's done. Andy Dalton's the number one quarterback. I still think that there's something else happening.
Yeah, well, in terms of Ifedi, real quick, I mean, when I saw the signing, I thought he's a replacement for Rashard Coward. Because remember, Rashard Coward is gone. So he's a guy that can play right tackle, he can play right guard. And in a pinch, he can play some left tackle as well. So I think he's more of a guy that's going to be a depth guy. And that could play into also what something you said as well, Aldo, because if you lose draft capital, you lose some of the ability to bring in some young guys, some depth. So this could be a cheap, guy that could play multiple positions along the offensive line. So, I would not pencil in Ifedi as your starting right tackle just yet, just like I would not pencil Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback week one. So let it all play out. Ifedi's just a piece, probably just a depth piece in my opinion. So he's not a guy that I would be penciling in by any means or as a starter week one for sure.
And Neil, I know the answer that Danny's going to give me for this question, so I'll ask you. Is let's say, we can't get that first round quarterback, the top 5. Danny is obviously going to target Sam Ehlinger. Who would you target as a day 2 pick if we had to go that route?
As a day 2 pick, I think I talked about that a little bit while JD was still on. I think Kellen Mond would be at least a decent thought at a round 3 day 2 pick. I don't think you take him in the second round. I think that's way too much money to dip into a developmental guy. But I think the difference in guaranteed cash between a round 3 round 4 guy is only just a few $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
I only say a few $100,000 in a time when we're looking under the mattress and behind couch cushions for cash. But in terms of somebody outside of Sam Ehlinger, I would be comfortable us drafting. The only other person would be Kellen Mond. And anybody else does not excite me whatsoever. And so the answer to that question is sort of, not that it's a formality, but, outside of Sam Ehlinger, those are really the only 2 guys I feel comfortable taking around the 3 or 4 range in this draft. Outside of if we can't get somebody in that first round, those are the 2 guys I would look to.
And Danny, tell me why not Kellen Mond?
Oh no, I agree with Neil. I mean, in terms of why I wouldn't trick. I mean, the only thing with Kellen Mond is like I said before, is just the inconsistencies, right? He's a guy that's got all the physical tools, arm strength, athletic body. He's a dual threat. He's a guy that can make all the NFL throws. It's just the inconsistencies. I mean, we saw that this year in the Senior Bowl practices. We saw it in the game, right? He ended up being the MVP. But I mean, there's some throws where he's way off. Whether it's mechanics, whether it's just reads, whether it's just going through a progression. And there's times where he makes beautiful touch passes. The one touchdown that he threw to Amari Rodgers in Senior Bowl was a hell of a throw. He hit him right in the spot that only Rodgers can catch it. And so he makes those kind of wild plays at times, and then he makes those head scratchers. So I think it's just with him, it's just consistency. I think Fisher, when he came at Texas A&M, I think that kind of helped him out a little bit, got him a little bit more, to be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more consistent. But you still saw some of that inconsistencies. And really, what if you go back to 2019 last year, and you put on the Clemson game, Texas A&M versus Clemson, and you just saw Mond was just like shell shocked. He's a guy that couldn't complete passes. He was just overwhelmed, and it wasn't a good look for him. So that's what really kind of got me. But a guy, if you're talking about a guy you can bring in a third round or fourth round, is a guy you can sit back there and learn behind, a veteran and develop. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a guy that intrigues me. But I think with the Bears right now, I think you guys may agree is minus a trade for Watson or Wilson. You need a guy that's going to come in and be ready to play within the first year. So for me right now, it's those 5 guys in that first round. Those are the guys that I can feel comfortable, sometime within that first year are going to come in and step in and be able to play. Even with a guy like Ellinger that I like a lot, there's some things that he has to work on. I've said it before, the arm strength could be an issue. There's something that he's going to have to work on. I know he's worked at his pro day, talked about speeding up his delivery, getting more consistent in terms of downfield accuracy and being able to drive the football. So, I mean, if he can kind of correct some of those things, whether it's mechanical or whatnot, I think that's a guy that definitely could come in and just from the verbiage standpoint, right? He understands the game and all that stuff. The other thing with Ellinger, he hasn't taken a snap under centers in his entire career. So that's going to be a whole different change for him as well, too. So that's going to be an adjustment there as well. But that's why I thought those 5 guys in that first round, those are the guys I feel like can come in, especially talk about a guy like Justin Fields, a guy like Mac Jones, guys that can come in, I think, within, probably even, week 1 could be the starter.
These guys above me on the picture, Danny Shemin and Neil Stopchinski, are the best. They're the best in the business at reviewing talent, and we do it every Thursday. Although this Thursday, we are going to take a break so they can catch up on some of the tape, but we'll be back. And who knows, we might be back this Thursday with more news about some big signing or a trade or something like that. I'll bother you guys and pull you guys away from the videotape machine to get your commentary. But I love your analysis and love your passion for Chicago sports. And we've got a lot more stuff happening here on the network. I just had up on the screen that the Mike North Advantage is being moved to Thursdays so I can take care of a personal thing. Buffon 55 might be back here tomorrow night, depending on what the news of the day is. And then, of course, the Barfly Tailgate on Saturday. And then next week, Sunday, Barfly Tailgate Show and Bulls 101 on Saturday night. And then next week, we've got the debut of the new South Burbs Hitmen, the White Sox show. I know that Neil Stopchinski can't wait to check out that show. He's probably going to be a guest really early on so he could do a point-counterpoint show with the guys. So that should be a lot of fun. And Danny Shemin, I know you're a White Sox fan, so you're probably looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll get you by the time we get the White Sox represented on this network.
Finally,
guys. At this point, I just need something positive coming out of our sports teams here.
Thank you. The
that's where I'm at right now. I mean, the Blackhawks are, they're doing decent. The Bulls are okay. We need somebody to just show up and take over. And it seems like it happens every time, though.
Yeah.
Once somebody that was on top, takes a fall. Like, the Blackhawks were on top for 6 years. They started, their downside. The Cubs took over for a few years. Now the Cubs are on the downside. Seems like the Sox are the next up. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, we need a turnaround. I mean, the Hawks have lost 3 of their last 4, so hopefully they'll get their act together because we are planning a new Blackhawks show here on the network as well. So we're expanding our offering of Chicago sports and entertainment programming, so hope you will let people know. We had a great crowd, people watching live, eclipse a couple hundred people at certain points, and we know we'll get thousands more watching this show on demand. So I'm going to go ahead and post it on our audio channels and also here on YouTube. So guys, again, thanks very much for on such short notice jumping on and providing your expert commentary.
Anytime, Olda.
All righty, brother. Take care.
Anytime. All right. Bye-bye.